The bench press on the Bowflex is very different from the normal bench press you'd see somebody do in a gym. Usually a bench press in a gym is done with a barbell and works very specific muscles. For example, typically the bench press we'd expect to work everything on the front part of the shoulder. Front deltoids, part of the middle deltoids, and most notably the pectoralis major. In fact, many people just call it a chest exercise, but there's a lot more than that working. Now, whether or not you use your triceps on this exercise, we're going to be very different because we have many options with the Bowflex, such as in pulley positions, and we'll talk about that when we get there. First thing you're going to notice is Josh is just sitting on the seat facing forward. The seat height is the first thing you've got to be concerned about because that's going to determine the plane or path that you can push through. Now, take a look. You can see we set the seat just right so that Josh's shoulders were about the same height as this main crossbar back here. Now, he's all ready to go. We've got actually the pulleys in the first position, the narrowest position. And I'm even going to suggest that maybe if you've never done this exercise before, this is a great place to start. This actually mimics the position that we had on the oldest version of the Bowflex, the old Power Pro. Now, next, grabbing the handles. And here's where you need to start from the very beginning, taking care of how you do things. So watch how Josh does this. He kind of leans forward and reaches back from underneath, and then just kind of curls the handle to his shoulder. Now that's a lot better than trying to reach back over the top like this. I would not advise that. Replay this if you have to, but watch how Josh did that. Then he just brought his arms out to the side, not all the way up to shoulder height. See, he's just right there, just a little bit below shoulder height. That's just perfect. And his elbows are bent to about 90 degrees. Now, watch very carefully. Before you start moving, you need to position your body in just the right place. Make sure your head is back, don't throw your chin forward, and think about lifting your rib cage and kind of pinching those shoulder blades back and together. And if you can, work on keeping that trunk and rib cage position throughout the entire movement of each and every repetition. Now watch as he maintains that. He's going to slowly bring his arms together and straighten them towards the front. Now one big key here, see if you can do that again, Josh, and we're going to show people how the cable stays right near his arm the whole time. That shows that he's moving in the right plane, and you've got a little bit of leeway. You'll notice Josh could come up just a tiny bit and see the cable still against him. It's pretty close, and he could come down just a little bit. So he's got some opportunity for change there, and now it's kind of digging into him a little bit. So there's a few inches that he could come out, but pretty much from a side view, it's going to look like Josh's arms are staying perpendicular to or 90 degrees to his trunk, okay? Now, every time he goes back to the starting position, he lets the elbows bend. Watch slowly. See the elbows bend as he comes back, and he stops where his arms are just about even with the bench right here. They're not really going behind the bench with his elbow. That's a key component to being safe. And throughout each and every repetition, as he moves towards the center, he keeps everything tight and everything controlled. He doesn't throw anything. He doesn't try to jerk it or go fast. And he keeps that rib cage up the entire time. Now you want to try something different for me here?
Yep.
Watch this. We'll move out to the second pulley position, kind of the next to the narrowest, and then Josh is reaching from underneath again, curling up, elbows out to the side, and he'll do the press again, but this time the cable is addressing his arm at a slightly different position, and it's closer to the elbow when he's out at the widest or starting point. So the first two narrowest settings here are pretty much going to involve, along with these anterior shoulder muscles and pecs, your tricep. Now watch this next one. I'm going to go ahead and take you to the Xtreme, the widest position, and this will be much more difficult. You may not be able to use the same resistance that you chose for the narrow settings that you can for the wide settings. This is a little tougher because, watch carefully, as Josh comes back, this cable is almost further out than his elbows are. It's outside of his elbows. He's actually using different muscles, not so much tricep this time, but actually more of these elbow flexors because the cable's trying to pull his arms apart or wider. And you'll notice, watch when he gets towards the center. This cable's pulling outward on him almost like a cable crossover would if he was doing a pressing type motion in the middle of a cable crossover in a traditional gym setting. Feels different, right?
Oh yeah.
And notice how hard he's working to keep that chest up. Can we do one more? Watch what happens when Josh does this, and let everything collapse and just throw your shoulders forward. see, it's just not as tight. There's not as much going on. When he lifts that rib cage and keeps that up the whole time, it changes things dramatically. So before you go challenge yourself with a bunch of weight and start worrying about the numbers on the ends of the rods, put a little bit on there and practice these things we discussed, and you'll get a lot more out of it. The chest fly on the Bowflex has several options that we're going to talk about that will actually make it a little, one option like a little bit like a dumbbell fly that you've done in a gym maybe, and the other option will be a little bit like a cable crossover type of fly that you also might have seen in a gym. But first things first, the chest fly does work not only just the pecs, but everything on the front part of the shoulder, some deltoids and that kind of thing. And there's actually going to be some of these elbow flexors involved in keeping the arm in a relatively static, not necessarily straight, but static, unmoving position at the elbow. So we set the seat for Josh for this exercise is just right so that his shoulder is just about even with the crossbar. So check your seat position a couple times, maybe have a mirror set up and you can kind of tell where you are here. That's the first critical thing. Next, be very careful with how you grab the handle. So go ahead and show him, Josh, kind of reach underneath there and watch how he kind of bends his elbow and brings it right to his shoulder. That is by far the safest way. Don't try to reach back over or out and stuff like that. This is a really good way to do it. And then he's just going to bring his arms out to the side. And like I said, he's keeping a little bit of a bend in his elbow. And you can even vary that. Sometimes a little more of a bend, sometimes a little straighter. That looks pretty good right there. And I've got the pulley set in the narrowest setting. And this is going to be the best place for beginners to start, primarily for getting used to the exercise, because this will actually make the resistance a little less dramatic for you having the pulley in this position. So watch as he positions his body, he keeps that rib cage out and up and really kind of keeps his shoulder blades back the whole time. And then he slowly brings his arms to the front. Now, you may have heard this cue if you've been around gyms long enough where people talk about act like you're reaching around a tree. Have you ever heard that? Yeah. Act like you're going to hug a tree. And I would really advise against that, because usually when people do that, when they come around to reach around the tree, yeah, they drop everything. They drop their rib cage, they drop their posture. So I'm going to suggest you don't think about the hugging thing, but think about the shoulders back and simply bringing those arms towards the center with this being prominent, sticking up your rib cage. Males or females, it doesn't matter. If you want to involve these muscles right here the most, the chest muscles, keep that rib cage up. And you can play with it a little bit and you'll see what I mean. But now let's take a look as we come back. Notice that go ahead and go towards the front, Josh. The pulley just about lines up through Josh's shoulder here and makes a really easy position at the end. Like I said, a nice place to learn the movement. As you get better at it, or if you just want a difference, you know what you can do is move the pulley out. You can try the other settings, but just for an extreme example right now with Josh, I'm going to show you the widest setting that I mentioned before was a little bit like the cable crossover type of fly in the gym. Now watch as he comes together. The cable is not lined up through his shoulder this time. It's still pulling out to the side. And there's a dramatic difference in how hard this is or how difficult this is, because he's having to work, even up here, he's having to work to keep the weight or resistance from pulling him out. So it's much more difficult through the entire range of motion. How's it feel?
Definitely
pretty
harder.
Good? Yeah.
Harder.
And notice this is just a standard plane of motion, meaning he's not declined or inclined. His arms are just about 90 degrees to his torso. So he's just moving straight in front of his chest the whole time. Perfect. Let's take a look at the decline press or decline chest press. Now this time, the seat is a little bit lower. And notice for Josh, we've actually got it on the lowest setting. And for Josh, that ends up being where his shoulders are about the same height as the pulley when they're not being used, when they're just hanging here. And that's going to be important because it's a new plane or path of motion that's going to angle downward. So the pulley needs to be, in essence, above his shoulder as much as we can get it. So notice how he reaches back to grab, again reaching behind and just bringing a bent arm and curling it right in towards his shoulder, and then elbows out to the side. Now watch. Start before you even move, start by getting the chest up high, pinching the shoulders nice and tight back together. And a lot of times people don't think about this enough, or they think, oh, I'm good enough. Really, go ahead and try to get them back there and work on that and get that rib cage up and out. Now, we're going to angle downward. We're going to drive the arms together, straightening the elbows and meeting the hands in the center or coming close to it. And you'll notice I have got the pulleys in the narrow position. Again, I think this is a great place to start, especially learning the exercise. It makes it a little bit like a dumbbell press. You know, if you use dumbbells in the gym, when you get to where the dumbbells are over you, they're kind of balanced through your shoulder. They're not very difficult in that position. And this is mimicked by the pulley position here. And that looks perfect. Now, if you notice from the side, the angle at which Josh is pushing, he's probably a foot lower maybe from his original chest press that we did before, if you reviewed that. Now, take a look what happens. We can make this a little bit different. If I move this outward, I'll go ahead and just move it out just a little bit, maybe to the third hole from the narrowest or the next to the widest. Same path of motion, but we've changed things. From this position, you can see that when Josh goes to the end with arms near straight, the cable is not lined up through his shoulder anymore or resting on his shoulder. It's got some separation there, and that makes it harder at this position. If we went out to the widest position again, even all the way out here, it would be even tougher. So you may have to adjust the weight. If you did a really challenging set with the pulleys in narrow, and then you say, hey, for the next set I'm going to go wider, you might have to change things a little bit. Notice every time, one key component to using the Bowflex, every time Josh moves through the path of motion, that cable stays lined up through his arm. Watch what would happen. If he was too high, he would know it right off the bat because there's some distance between his arm and the cable. So that's what helps him to know that he's moving the right direction. And then all he has to do, if he's feeling it in his chest and keeping it up, he's going to really be able to tell versus let it drop again. Let's see. If he lets that chest drop, yep, it's just not going to provide the same effect to him as if he really tries to keep his posture the whole time. The incline press or incline chest press works not only predominantly the top part of your pectoralis major, but a whole lot of the front part of your shoulder, and depending on what we do with the pulleys, it's going to involve different parts of your elbow muscles, either your tricep or your bicep. So the first thing, you're going to adjust the seat pretty high, probably the highest of anything you've done so far. Notice we've got Amy up here way up in the air because we're going to be pushing at an upward angle. And so by the time we create a scenario where the cable stays against her arm and she's moving at an upward angle, she needs to be virtually 3 or 4 inches, maybe 5 or 6 inches higher than the actual pulleys are in the starting position. So try different seat positions before you actually do the movement and just see what it looks like, maybe in a mirror from the side. You can tell how high you're pushing. Now the next thing is watch how you grab the handle. So Amy reaches from underneath, kind of bends her elbow so it doesn't put a lot of stress on her shoulder. And then when she curls them towards her shoulders and then elbows out to the side. Now, watch the angle she presses at. She's going to bring shoulders back, rib cage up, and she's pushing upward, kind of up even with the top of her head. Now, when we were doing a regular chest press before, it would have been down lower like this. So you can see the slight difference, and there is a slight difference not only in terms of what muscles are participating, not so much that they're different, but different aspects of the same ones, and it's a little bit different for the wear on your shoulders. Keep it going there, a couple more. Now this is the narrow setting, and notice that the cable is falling right next to her shoulder when she's at the top. Slow down a little bit. There you go. So see how it's balanced right there? It's much easier right there. And when she comes down, the cable is rubbing on her arm between her elbow and her shoulder. When we move this wider, let's just go back and I'm going to change it for a second. When we go wider, which is a great option for you. You may want to change resistance. She's already got a pretty easy resistance for her. But watch the difference. When she goes up to the top, the cable is a long way from her shoulder now. It's a little bit harder, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tougher to get to the center because this cable, by not balancing through her shoulder, is a little bit tougher. And it's also a little bit different on the elbow because it's right even with the elbow and a little bit outside of the elbow. It might even bring in some of the elbow flexors instead of the triceps. So a little bit different thing. It's not a bad substitute. You can even change between the various chest presses that we've discussed just for not only variety, but just to have an entirely different stress on your shoulders so you're not always getting the same old thing in there. Make sure every time, though, that you're really slow, really consistent with your path of motion, never trying to throw it, never trying to just launch it really fast, and keep this posture we've talked about, chest up and shoulders a little bit back. The decline chest fly and also the decline chest press we mentioned earlier are not what they seem to be. In other words, many times in the gym people say, oh, this works your lower pec, when in fact the decline plane of motion may be the best at working your entire pec. Well, let's take a look. We've got Amy's seat pretty low here so that the pulley is relatively high compared to her shoulder. This is going to allow her to move through that lower plane. So go ahead and grab out there, and we've got that one on the third hole, and put this one on the third hole from the center. And notice how she bent her arms and then brought the weights into the center. Oh yeah, there you go. Now, watch the path of motion. Watch where the cable is. Chest up, shoulders back, and squeeze towards the center a little bit low, but her arms are lined up right with the cable, creating that perfect declined plane of motion. And let's show them what happens if it's too high. What's it going to look like if you came out here? See how that cable would be way up above her arm here? So when she comes down, right there, it's lined up right with her arm. And that looks great. So she's keeping her chest up, shoulders back, watching how far back she comes with her arms at the end so they don't try to go behind the bench. Very important safety tip. Take it nice and slow. There you go. We've got Josh set for the inclined fly. Now the seat's a little bit higher than normal. In fact, I think we've got it just about all the way up here and maybe one notch from the top. And that's going to allow him to move upwards at an angle that we call an incline in the gym. And it's going to work, again, not only his chest, but a bunch of muscle in the front of his shoulder. And the key here, as always, is be careful how you grab the handles. Reach back slowly, bend your arms slowly, and then get that chest up, shoulders back. Now watch from the side, you can see when he comes up, that cable keeps lined up with his arms. He could even go, let's see what happens if you go just a little bit higher or a little bit lower. A little bit higher, it's not lined up with his arm as much anymore. So we might actually have him go, that was a little bit too high of an incline. There you go, but it's still a lot higher than where he was when he was doing that regular chest fly. Notice he keeps his arm at about the same position. It's not all the way straight. It's not bent very much. He could bend it a little more if he chose to. That's just a personal preference thing. But he's keeping all these positions. And the one final thing I want to tell you, there's a lot of myths in the gym about flies, like one kind of fly works your inner chest and one kind of fly works your outer chest. And sorry, folks, none of that stuff is even possible. So you can choose your pulley width here based on whether you like the dumbbell fly feeling, which would be the closer feeling, or more of a cable crossover type of fly, which would be the outer setting. But either way, they're both working the same parts across the top of your pec and shoulder. This is called a rear delt row, but there's really a lot more going on than that. First of all, remove the seat. You're not going to need it. And we're going to start with either the pulleys in the narrowest setting, or you might try it in the next to the narrowest, probably to position 2, I guess we could call it. And then when you grab the handles, notice how Josh has got them crossed here. So with his left hand, he grabbed the right handle and vice versa. And now when he stands up, here's what we suggested. Maybe he do kind of a 1 foot in front of the other kind of stance, not with his feet lined up, with a little bit of width to him so he's stable front to back and stable side to side. And then what he really needs to do is angle his torso so he's pretty much perpendicular to the cables. So he's kind of bent forward ever so slightly, but notice he's got a pretty good spinal alignment here. He didn't just go ahead and slouch kind of forward. He's not bent forward like that. We never want that. So he's really got his chest up and everything. He's just kind of bent forward at the hip by sticking his bottom out. Now, what you're going to notice across here is a whole lot of work with all these muscles in the trapezius and rhomboids and all those scapular guys, some rear delts, and even some guys underneath the rear delts, a little bit of the rotator cuff and that kind of stuff. Now watch carefully. He's going to lead with his elbows. His palms are facing the ground, and he leads with the elbows and keeps them almost shoulder height and takes them back as far as he can without just going ahead and leaning his whole body back. Yeah, we don't want that. So now when he comes forward, his torso stays there. It doesn't follow him forward, and he can squeeze him back again. You can see exactly what he's working here. This time as he comes forward, you want to let your shoulder blades move a little bit. Sometimes you can let your shoulder blades move a little bit as long as you don't slouch. That's an option also. But every time he comes back, he's got those arms almost shoulder height, and that's the key because watch, let's take him down. See what happens? When he went down away from shoulder height, you don't see those rear delts as much anymore, do you? So that's pretty neat right there. A couple more reps and you can watch that perfect form. Nothing else changes. Feeling good?
Oh yeah.
Get the weight just right so you can practice the perfect one first. There you go. This is the crossover high rear delt row. And we're going to do it from the lat tower. And I suggest on this one that you put the pulleys in the narrowest setting that's available on the lat tower. Now, take a look. Seat's gone. Josh steps around the front there, and watch how he crosses over, meaning right hand to the left handle, left hand to the right handle, and then when he gets ready and gets in position, the cables and handles will actually cross. So, here's the key. He's kind of got his feet not only a little bit side to side, in other words, they're not lined up with each other like he's standing on a balance beam or anything. They're still split side to side, but they're also split front to back, and that's so he can balance front to back as I ask him to do this next thing, which is a very slightly lean back. Very slightly. Notice he did that in his lower extremity. He didn't just arch his back a whole bunch. Show what happens if it's too much in the back. Yeah, if he just did that in his back, I don't necessarily want that. That'd be uncomfortable. So he's doing it all kind of down here, this leaning back thing. It's almost like he's like a water skier, if you can imagine that, just a little bit back. And what that does, it angles his torso so that he's kind of perpendicular to the cables here. And now watch. His palms are facing the ground, and he leads with his elbows. That was so critical. And every time he brings his elbows back, his elbows bend to about 90 degrees, and his shoulder blades are pinched back too. See all this pinching together, all these scapular muscles, and you can see the rear delts. And as he goes forward, he lets those shoulder blades come apart. Show him that again, Josh. See how they come apart? And then every time he pinches here, as he brings them back, and that's perfect. And every time he keeps his elbows just about shoulder height. And this next time, I want you to see the difference between that, and if his elbows drop way down, now that's a different thing. That's going to be something else we might do later, but you don't see as much activity up here. Some, it's not that there's nothing working up here, but if the emphasis is up in this area, rear delts and all of its little buddies, then we're going to keep those arms out to the side like that. There you go. For this rear delt type of exercise, we're going to be seated on the floor and again crossing the cables in front. So when you grab the cables from the bottom platform, move the pulleys to the widest position, and then grab the one from the right side with the left hand and vice versa. Now, make sure you bend your knees some here because it's going to make it a lot easier to sit up erect in your spine with your knees bent. If you try to lock your knees out, not only will it be uncomfortable, but also you're going to have this big rounded place on your back. So nice and straight, chest up, palms facing the floor. Elbows are going to move out to the side at near shoulder level. Now, when he's doing this, notice he's not moving forward and backward in the trunk. He's not pulling with everything like he's rowing a boat. He's just moving his arms by leading with the elbows, bending the elbows. As he comes forward, his arms straighten out again. Notice his shoulder blades came forward, but he kept his posture. You really got to practice those things. Josh is really good at it, and it takes some practice. So one more time. Elbows out to the side, he's going as far back as he can, really trying to squeeze everything across there, squeezing between the shoulder blades, and then controlling it forward again, keeping his spine in perfect alignment, knees bent. Here's another version of the rear delt row, only this time we're standing like one of the previous ones, but we're going to be bent over using the pulleys from the platform. So I'm going to ask Amy to come around here and face the machine. Now the whole key to this is more advanced than some of the others because before you just were trying to remain virtually upright while pulling from this direction. One of the greatest challenges to this exercise is being able to maintain the positions in your spine that you need to while bending forward to perform the exercise. So make sure that you understand that alignment and that you have the control and ability to do it because you're going to have to bend forward at the hips while keeping your back nice and flat. And that's the tough part. That may be the part that actually gets tired during the exercise for many beginners. And then the key is going to be, once you grab the handles, to move those elbows out to the side. Not beside your body, but out to the side the way Amy is. And notice her elbows, if you looked across here, her elbows at almost shoulder height in terms of being about 90 degrees from her body when she brings them out. And she's going as far back as she can while pinching her shoulder blades together. Look at that. That's perfect right there. You can see this muscle area really working. And as we mentioned before, it's not just the rear delts. There's a lot of other portions of the deltoid as well as deeper muscles, even portions of the rotator cuff that are working here. But the whole thing is that she's paying close attention. Even when she's pulling on the cables and thinking about her arm movement, she's still in the back of her head is thinking, what position is my spine in? Am I keeping my abs tight? Those are the first and foremost things on her mind. This is a version of a rear delt exercise where we're also standing, but we're going to be bent over and crossing the cables this time. So Josh, I'm going to have you come around front here. We're using the cables or the pulleys from the platform, and we've got them adjusted. The position of the pulleys is adjusted not all the way out, not all the way in. When you do this, you might try one of the middle two settings for the platform pulley. And notice Josh used his right hand to grab the cable that's on the left and vice versa. And now we're set up. The big thing here is going to be getting a foot position, knee position, and hip position that allows him to do the thing he needs with his back, which is keep it flat. And sometimes you can think of this as keeping the chest out, because when people say keep your back flat, well, you can't really see your back from where you are. So sometimes you might think of it as, well, if my rib cage is kind of collapsed, then I know I'm rounded across the back. So try to keep that rib cage out, chest out, rib cage out, and then there's a much better chance that this is going to be the way you want it to be. Then all you have to do is use all the musculature all the way around to try to hold it that way as you perform the perfect rear delt row, which involves your arms being away from your sides. Show them what happens when your arms are too close to your sides, Josh. See, that's not what we're looking for. That's a good exercise, but it's something else. Maybe it's for later. Right now, we're trying to get the arms out away from the side. You can see the activity up here. You see his shoulder blades moving, and they go forward. As he reaches forward, they bring back. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't pinch their shoulder blades as they come back. And it's a vital portion. And if you've never done that before, it'll actually make it a little bit tougher. So there, he's reaching forward, bringing back, arms away from the side. And he's letting his elbows bend. His elbows are kind of floating as he goes along. His elbows and forearms are in line with the cable. So he's reaching, but as he comes across, that cable and forearm stay lined up with each other. And that is perfect. Just keep in mind the position you want your low back in, and be safe, nice and slow, remember. Some people call this the reverse fly, and it's really just another version of what a lot of people think of as a rear deltoid exercise. Even though there's a lot of other muscles working, that probably is the main thing. So Amy's going to help me right here. Notice we've got the pulleys on the narrow setting with no seat. She's going to come around front and face the machine, and with the right hand grab the right handle and the left hand grab the left handle, and kind of keep her feet split, maybe front to back, just for a little support and stability. Now, here's the key. This being more like a fly, she's going to hold her elbows still. Now, that doesn't mean locked out straight. She's going to keep a slight bend in it. There's another thing I want to talk to you about here. And if you can see, a lot of times people, when they do flies in the gym, whether it's a reverse fly or a chest fly, they always think that a fly position has to do with turning the palms towards each other, like this. You do not necessarily have to do that. In fact, for this, I'm not sure that I would, because when we turn the palms, so many times we externally rotate the whole shoulder. And when she comes back, you're not going to see as much activity here as when she keeps the palm facing the ground and then takes the arm straight out. Now watch this. Look at all these things working, not only rear delts, but a lot of the other deltoids, trapezius, all those scapular guys. And come on back to the center. She keeps her posture as she comes forward. It's so nice and so slow and so controlled. And as she goes out, notice her arms are just very slightly below shoulder level. And this is important. So a lot of times people start bringing them down too low, or they start bending their elbows a bunch, and they end up doing all kinds of things like this. So try your best to go slow and pay attention. This is where it's nice to have a mirror. You can even move around the room, maybe one that would normally go on the back of a door, so it's got a frame on it, and it's kind of sturdy, and you can lean it against the wall and watch and move it from side to side. But that way she can see exactly the plane she's moving through, and look at all the activity there. She's doing a great job. So try your best to make it look just like Amy's doing right here. The crossover reverse fly is a great exercise, not only working their posterior deltoid, but a lot of other scapular muscles and even some other deltoid muscles a little bit. Now, notice the seat is gone. The cables can either be in the narrow setting, or if you've got pretty long arms like Josh does, we went to a little wider setting so it wouldn't rub on the bench when he crosses those cables over. Now, as he comes around, he's going to reach over with his right hand to grab that left cable, and vice versa here, left hand on the cable from the right side. Now, the next thing is real important, of course. Not only his posture, keeping that spine, relatively straight so he's not all hunched up and slouching and that kind of thing. You always want to watch for that. But also he's got his feet kind of split front to back. And that helps him be stable, and he bends over just a little bit so his torso is perpendicular to the cables right here. And he's going to keep his arms pretty stiff, meaning not necessarily straight, not necessarily locked, but not letting him bend during the exercise either. And that's what's going to make this a fly type of movement. Now, we're going to ask also that instead of turning his palms towards each other, traditional fly, maybe keep the palms facing the ground. Try it and see which one you like better. But I think if you try this and get used to it, I think you'll like it. Now, notice what he did here. He's brought those shoulder blades together as he came back. As he goes forward, he can let them move just a little bit there. but he keeps all of his torso in such a great alignment. And you see that elbow coming out on each side at just about shoulder level. Not quite. We don't want it up all the way the same height as the shoulder. No way. We want it just below, maybe even with his armpit, you could almost say. And see, that's just about where he is, right across there. Now, if he starts to go lower than that when he comes back, you're not going to see quite as much going on here. Notice still a little bit. But if he wants the optimum for this kind of deal, right about even with his armpit for height. Keeping the arm straight, keeping the motion nice and slow, and watching that torso. If you start to get tired in here, it may be time to quit the exercise. The seated shoulder press is a great upper body exercise involving not only the deltoids, like so many people think, but also almost all of the scapular muscles, and even rotator cuff. It's a great rotator cuff exercise, especially when you're doing it with the lighter weights and warming up and that kind of thing. So what you want to do is set the seat height so that it's high enough that when you grab the handles, you really got some tension on them, because you can see that if it was too low, when the handle was up here, your hand would be up this high before you even started the press. So that might not work as well. So we've got this set for Josh where his shoulder level is just about the same as the crossbar right here. Now notice we're still going to have him reach underneath to grab the handles. That's still real important that you don't reach over the top. And now he bends the elbow and gets him into position. We have got the pulleys specifically set on either the narrow position, and in a minute we'll show you the next to the narrow position. There's probably the two best options for you. The narrowest is going to be the easiest, and as he presses upward and a little bit forward, you'll see he's actually kind of going over his forehead a little bit. And as he does, he keeps his forearms parallel, kind of reaching up to the sky there. And as he comes down, he bends his elbows, again keeping his forearms parallel the whole time. And he could, if he wanted, he could even push a little bit more forward. It'd be a little bit different version of the same thing, and a little bit more even upper pec involvement. But a little bit higher where you started, go back where you started just a little bit. There you go. Now, let me show you something. When we go one notch wider, go ahead and take it down while I do this. I didn't want to make it tougher on you while you're up in the air. One notch wider, the second pulley position. And it's going to be a little bit tougher already because the pulleys or the cables are pulling out wide on him from the top, right? So you can't balance there.
Yeah.
So that's pretty tough. To come all the way out here, the widest pulley, I'm not sure I would do it with this exercise. Even the next to the widest, I'm not sure I would. So pay close attention to what he's doing. Let the shoulder blades move up when you reach up. They're going to come down when you come down. Allow all that natural motion and keep it slow and controlled. This is the front shoulder raise, and we've got a couple options for you on this. We're going to use the pulleys from the bottom, from the platform, and pull them back. Bring those pulleys back. They got those adjustable settings on them. Bring them back so they're just about shoulder width. So we're at next to the back for Amy here, and she's got the individual handles, and it's real simple. All we're going to do is start with one at a time, raising the arm up to the front. And notice, a lot of people say, oh, it's the front deltoid. It's a front deltoid and a whole bunch of the middle deltoid. You can even see some upper pec in there. So there's a lot of things. Plus, she's having to stabilize with the scapula. We don't want those shoulder blades moving around all over the place when she's doing this. So lots of control. Now, one thing you notice, she's got plenty of cable travel to be able to go way up on hers. Now, I'm about 6'2", and if I did this, I might have to do one of two things. Either put the adjustable webbing in there, which would make it work out great, or I could even put the seat down on a low setting and do them seated. Of course, she could do them seated too if she wanted to. So there's a couple nice options. Now, once you get used to doing them, one at a time, and you get that feeling of control in your torso, try them if you want to, two at a time. Try them, Amy, bilateral. This is a lot tougher because it's right here that she's having to control so much, because it's twice as hard on her trunk muscles to lift both arms to the front with all that load pulling on them. And then another really fun thing you can do to kind of mix it up and work on coordination almost. You know how to do the simultaneous alternating? This is great. Nice and slow. Just because you're doing something, two at one time here, alternating, doesn't mean you get to go fast like you're trying to swim or do some kind of pedaling or something with your hands. Nice and slow and controlled. And you'll see a lot of work going on in the entire front part of the shoulder and even in the shoulder blades. This exercise is shoulder extension, and we're going to start with the seat removed and the pulleys in the narrow setting. And Amy's going to walk right around to the front, and her back's going to be to the camera, but you'll actually be able to see a lot more in what's going on in the muscles because she's here. Now, you're just going to grab with her left hand the left handle and the right handle with the right hand, and then split the feet again front to back. That's again for stability. She's going to keep her spine nice and controlled, tighten the abs and all that good stuff. And then all she's going to do is keep the arms relatively straight and slowly bring them back, even with her body and maybe even a little bit behind there. And watch what she did right then. Did you see? Go do it again. Shoulder blades move forward as she moves her arms forward. Now watch, she pinches these shoulder blades together as she brings them back. Sometimes you'll see people do this and they don't really pinch their shoulder blades together. It's not going to do the same thing. You'll feel so much more if you can pinch it every single time. Now, she could also alternate them if she wanted to. There you go. Now I'll show you the little bit more advanced version. Once you get pretty good at a couple of these versions, go ahead and step back just a little bit and then lean forward by bending at the hips. Now see, she did not lose her posture. She took her nice straight back and bent forward by sticking her hips out. That's why I say it's advanced, because that's the advanced part of it. But in doing that, she's able to start from a greater range of motion instead of just pulling from here to here like the initial one. So now let's take a look at that, Amy. Pinching together. There you go. And it's also tougher because the further these cables travel, the more the rod bends. And you remember from the first part of this DVD or video that the further the rod bends, the more resistance you get. So this in many ways is more advanced. So give it a try, but not till you're ready, not till you can control the first version. Okay, this is the shoulder shrug, and we've actually got some wonderful options on this that you will not even have in the gym using free weights. The big reason we have options is because of the multiple positions in which we can put our pulleys down here. Now we've got this set for Josh, where the pulleys are almost in the next to the narrowest setting on this bottom platform pulley. So Josh, come on around and face the machine. When you're using the narrow setting or next to the narrowest setting, we're going to face the machine. If you're using the wider setting or next to the widest setting, you're going to face away from the machine. But right here with Josh, you can see some critical things. He's keeping nice posture. He's drawing his shoulders up while letting his arms just hang straight down. And the key component, he's not throwing his head backwards. Show what happens when you kind of look up the ceiling. We're not doing that. Do not allow yourself to do that. Take off some weight, do whatever it takes to fix that. And he's not throwing his chin forward. Show him what that looks like. We're not going to do that. So those two cervical or head movements, we're not going to allow those to happen when you're doing the shrug. This is critical, folks. This is what's going to make it safe. Okay? So watch what he does here. He's thinking about bringing his shoulders towards the back of his head. One cue that you'll hear all the time in the gym and often read in magazines and books is to take your shoulder towards your ears. And these muscles don't attach anywhere near your ears. And you'll actually be more effective if you take your shoulders towards the back of your head, which is a little bit behind you rather than right towards your ear right there. So keep all those other things in mind. And remember, you can make a nice variation on this. In fact, let's show them, Josh. Move that on out to the wide one. And then just face away from the machine here. Now look, this time, because the pulley's a little wider, it's going to pull outward on his arms. Some people might find that really more comfortable, and they might even get more range of motion because the pulleys are pulling outward slightly or the cables are outward. But all the same things. Shoulders to the back of the head, not shoulders to the ears. Don't let your head go up or eyes up. Don't let your chin go forward. How does that feel?
Good.
This exercise is called the lateral shoulder raise, and it involves a lot of the muscles around the deltoid area, even some rotator cuff muscles, scapular muscles. It's a really great exercise, but you're definitely going to want to keep it light on this because you can tell if you're getting too heavy because you start using every other part of your body at the same time. You've seen people do it, right? Now watch, it's real simple. Just grabbing the handle, seat removed. We have these pulleys, the platform pulleys, to the narrowest setting all the way back by the main part of the machine here. Now, they're just simply going to keep the arms near straight. You got a slight bend in the arms. And don't think so much about lifting the hand. Think about lifting the elbow. Okay? In fact, let's just slow down a little bit there. Keep that elbow up, the highest. There you go. So the elbow is almost like always higher than the hand, just a little bit. And that makes it, yeah, that's a little bit tougher, right? Mm-hmm. So we're not leading with the hand. We're not throwing the hand up. We're leading with the elbow. That looks great, the very slight bend. Now, he's standing. Josh is standing up perfectly straight right now. The thing I'd like for you to see If you're good enough at alignment and posture in your spine, if you're good enough at stabilizing your trunk, and it's a big if, you got to know who you are, then you can bend forward at the hips, and you can see right over here from the side that he's got his nice posture. And now we've actually changed very slightly the parts of the deltoid that are involved. Because right here, he's bent over more, and you're going to see more of this middle part. You can really see that. There you go. Again, leading with the elbows. So you can see the difference between this, and then I'll have him stand up again, and you can see how different that is. And now it's a little more of this stuff up here on front. So that's a nice distinction. We could even have him bend over a little more dramatically. Go ahead and you can almost go against the bench right there. So he's bent over quite a bit, and that's real different. That's way around here, different parts of his deltoid. Now the whole thing is working. It's just that we're slightly changing the contribution from specific parts of the deltoid in the middle of this whole thing constantly working. Nice and slow. Don't ever worry about coming up higher than shoulder height. Don't ever worry about that. And if you don't quite make it to shoulder height, don't worry about that either. You'll work on it as you get stronger. You'll be able to go a little bit higher. I love this exercise. It's another lateral raise, but this time we're seated, and we're going to actually use the cuffs and place them over the forearm. So it's kind of a seated forearm lateral raise. Josh has already got that one on. You take this, this hand cuff and spread it apart and put that foam part over the upper part of the forearm, not clear up here by the bicep and stuff, so it's right up by the elbow. But it's nice and comfortable, and he doesn't have to hang on to it. Totally changes the forces on the shoulders. So some people that have had trouble with their shoulders and can't do some of these raises where the things are in their hands will be able to do this. So this is a wonderful exercise. Now, the pulley setting on the bottom, we've actually got in the next to the narrowest setting. So it's third from the front, in other words. And you can play with that if you want to. You could even bring it a little further forward if you wanted to try. And if you found that by moving it backwards, you get slack in the cable, just raise the seat up a little bit, and then you'll have a little more tension at the starting position. Now, the rest of it's real simple, just like a regular lateral raise. Keep your arms bent, almost like you're on one of those machines at the gym with the big pads that you push on. And you just come straight out to the side. And don't worry about going higher than the shoulders, just right up to about shoulder level if it's comfortable for you. Anything that's ever uncomfortable, just don't do it, right? You keep that arm bent the whole time. That'll keep the pads from sliding down towards your hands. Now something else you could do, we could actually have Josh sit up away from this thing a little bit, keeping his back straight, and now go out to the side. It'll change things just a little bit, not much. And if we wanted to, go ahead and stay right there. Bring your legs to the center, because I'm going to move these to the front. Stay. And this will change things even further, because he's going to be able to change the plane that he's moving through. So now he's taking his arms a little to the front and then bringing them back even with his body. So you can see from the side, again, very different part of the deltoid is being emphasized, although the whole thing is still working. Scapular protraction. Now, it's not an extremely popular exercise, but it's been used many times in the rehab of the shoulder, and there's an awful lot of people who are interested in the specific muscles that are associated with this, primarily the serratus anterior. Now, you don't need to worry about that, but if you are, take a look. We've got the pulleys in the narrow setting, and it's set in the same position that we would use on a normal chest press as far as the seat height. Amy reaches back and brings those weights to the shoulder level, and then she can go ahead and press right forward because we're going to leave the arm straight the whole time. Now, the whole movement here, and it's not a big movement, so you got to watch carefully, is all in the shoulder blades. Notice how she presses forward, not by leaning forward. She's not doing that. That doesn't help. It only takes away from it. So it's a short motion, and then when eccentrically or negatively she moves backwards, you'll feel the shoulders pinch together behind, and then forward again, back, yep, and then reach forward. So take a real close look there, and even slow down your VCR or your DVD if you have to see what's going on. But the arms don't move. They don't get wider. They don't bend and get straight. They're locked here at the elbow, and it's all in the shoulder blades. And there's a tremendous amount of muscle doing this. It's just not the visible muscle you're used to seeing and working all the time. Scapular depression involves muscles that are not only part of important postural aspects, but also complete the look of the entire back. And this movement is really the beginning of the pull down movements we're going to look at later. Now notice Amy's got the seat set very low. That's so that she could reach up and extend her arms fully without hitting the pulleys up here. And she's leaning back against the chair. We're using the narrow settings, which brings these pulleys as close to the front as we can get them. She's going to keep her head back, leave her arms straight, and notice at the beginning, the weight back here is basically pulling her shoulder blades up away from her waistline, and her goal is without bending the arms, there you go, to bring her shoulder blades toward her waistline. So that's what is meant by scapular or shoulder blade depression or downward movement. That's all it means. The key here is keeping these elbows straight the whole time. Now, if you find that from a side view, when you look in the mirror, you cannot get your arm up all the way Amy can, if your arm only goes up to right here, like kind of in front of your head, you may have to perform this exercise by turning around and facing the machine. That would allow you to sit away from it and have the cables at an angle. So take a look and see if you can do it the way Amy is, because she's got great range of motion in her shoulders, which allows her to lean back against the chair and use these pulleys the way they're set. This is a scapular retraction exercise. And again, because it's just shoulder blade motion, you're not going to see a lot of overall movement. But that's real important to make sure that you're not concerned about trying to move everything in your spine and make it look like some big deal when it's really about precision, okay? Now we're seated on the floor, knees bent, and that's going to be a critical factor in keeping your spine straight or sitting erect. It's keeping those knees bent for most people anyway. And then the pulley setting, it's going to be narrow or near the narrowest setting, like the second one from the tower here on the platform. Now, you can use either set of handles, and the whole thing is to keep your arms straight and slowly, like see right now, you can see Amy's shoulder blades are kind of spread apart forward, even though she's still sitting up straight. She's not, show them what happens if you slouch. We don't want that, right? So even though she's sitting up straight, she's got a little bit of a forward protracted position here, and the goal is for her to slowly pinch backwards against the resistance pulling on the cable. And that is all there is to it. And you can see right here from behind. Try it again. There you go. And you don't want to come up towards your ears. Show them what happens if you were actually shrugging. Yeah, that's not what it's supposed to look like. We're not going up to the ears. We're just going backwards, keeping the arms straight. Now, she's got quite a bit of weight on there. She's got 50 pounds right now because the rods are not having to bend very much. So if you remember from the beginning, she's only getting about 2/3 of that weight. So you may be surprised at how much weight you can put on there given how little they're bending. This is shoulder external rotation. And though a lot of people consider it solely an external rotator cuff exercise, there really is a little bit more than that involved. There's some deltoid in here and some scapular stabilization. And I guess the big thing is that we're trying to keep the upper arm still. So she can have it in, let's bring it a little closer to your side here, Amy. There you go. So she can bring it in here, but it doesn't have to touch your side. In fact, I don't think you want to smash it. But just try to control it. And she's trying to just pivot right here so the forearm moves in towards her stomach and then rotates away, creating this nice little arc around here. And keep the weight pretty light. We don't want to go to where necessarily like burning and fatiguing, and it's not one of those kinds of exercises. It's just a little bit of a strengthening exercise for the back part of the shoulder. This is shoulder internal rotation. And many times people think this is just a rotator cuff exercise, and that's not exactly true. Although the rotator cuff is involved, so are a lot of other muscles. But it's really important how you do this thing. And by internal rotation, that means we've got to have the resistance pulling from the outside of outward direction right here. And the big key is going to be what she does with the upper arm. She's not smashing it against her side, and she's not letting it move. So it's not going forwards and backwards. It's not going out. It's staying right here. She's holding it in space, and it's like a hinge. It's like almost like this was a gate, and then she's closing it, and she's opening it, but this hinged part does not move. I could sit here and put my finger right in her elbow, and she would never move off of my finger. Nice and controlled. The weight needs to be pretty light. You'll find that out real quickly. So keep the weight down low. Don't get in a hurry. You should never probably feel a fatigue type, single muscle fatigue type of thing. Like if you were doing an arm curl and you knew this was getting tired, you will not feel that on this kind of exercise. This is the standing back extension. And most people think of it as being for the low back, and that's probably one of the areas that's being affected most. But I want you to watch what's actually moving versus what's being held still, because that's really the key to this exercise. So Josh, just step in here for a second before we even address the weight or anything. And this is something you're going to want to make sure that you can do. Make sure you can do this. Watch Josh, especially from the side over here, and you can see as he moves forward, he's bending in the hips as if this was a hinge, and this is staying perfectly flat and straight. So now move back and forth, Josh. And you can see this, the relative position from the hips up doesn't change. We're trying to keep that almost like a board as he moves down here in the hips. And we need to pay attention to that even when we get the weight, even to pick up the weight, so that we're really safe in the low back while we're performing the exercise and getting into position. So Josh, go ahead and work on that side. And basically what you do is separate the foam cuff from the handle and put it way up on your forearm and keep those arms bent quite a bit so it stays down here kind of in the bend of your elbow, and it'll be more comfortable. You don't want to slide up here near your wrist. And he's holding his hands to help stabilize there. And the next motion is, as we mentioned, all in the hips. Now, control forward a little bit. Just go a little bit and come back up. Check your range of motion and check your strength and check your ability by moving very short movements and confirm that you've got it taken care of. You've got everything controlled, you've got everything the way you want it, and then you can say, okay, now I'm ready for a little bit more range. Always think progression, meaning start with the simple and work towards the hard. And right, for this exercise, the simple means short ranges of motion, working up to larger ranges of motion. And one thing you can look at also, as Josh goes forward, I might even have him go ahead and look at the ground as he goes down, and keep your head more in line with your body there. Go ahead and let your head go forward. There you go. So it stays in line with everything else. Now that's the gist of the exercise. The whole key, the whole success of it is going to be how well you prepare yourself to perform this. So take the time to do it right. This is the wide lat pull down, and we're going to do it in a seated position. And we've got the seat adjusted already for Josh so that when he reaches up to grab the bar, he doesn't have any slack in the machine. In other words, when he goes up, it won't hit at the top. He can straighten his arm all the way out and still have resistance. Watch what I mean. Go ahead and have a seat, Josh, facing the machine. Notice we've unhooked the lat bar from these bar hook holders up here, and it's hanging on the snap hooks. And I've got the pulleys in the narrow setting. There's really no reason here to put them out wider at all. It's not going to change anything because you're primarily pulling on the bar. Now, we've got him set so that when he reaches up, he actually can't reach the bar, which is good because it'll provide tension when he does have it in his hand. Now, there is no reason for most people to grab all the way out here. And most people are going to end up grabbing right on this bend because to go all the way out here will actually limit your motion because it depends on your arm length and your shoulder width in terms of where you need to go. There is the possibility that some people with smaller stature could even grab inside of these hooks right here. So kind of pay attention to how wide your how wide your hands are when you're in this position. And we don't want to be way out here. And if you stand in the mirror and look at this and your hands end up more in this width inside of where these snap hooks attach, then don't feel funny about grabbing inside of there even though Josh is out here. This is perfect for him. Now, if you notice from the side, he's going to sit up pretty straight. He is going to be pulling to the front. Now, a common exercise in the gym is the behind the neck lat pull down. I'm going to tell you this. Pulling behind your neck is inadvisable for anybody on a Bowflex, in the gym, irregardless, okay? Because of the structure of the shoulder, we're not necessarily designed to be way back there. So, he's in the perfect situation. The Bowflex actually sets up the situation perfectly, but when he sits upright, the pulleys are a little bit in front of him. He's ready to go. Now here's the key to the pull down. I want you to watch. It starts in the shoulder blades here. And as his shoulder blades get near the bottom, he brings his arms down in one fluid motion. Now, let's see how we get Josh to do it wrong, because he's seen many of his clients when he does personal training probably And what I was thinking was leave your shoulders kind of up by your ears and kind of do one of these numbers. Don't you see that all the time with your clients? When you first walk in the gym, when you first try this, it's just inevitable that you want to do it all with your arms. And your shoulders kind of stay up by your ears. So the whole thing is to get to where in one fluid motion, the shoulder blades go up when your arms go up, the shoulder blades go down and together when your arms go down. And the next thing to look at is that he's not worried about the bar touching his chest. Now, it may touch his chest, but that's more due to him bringing his arms to his side, and that's the range of motion you're concerned about, is this arm coming to the side. If the bar stops for you, go ahead and come down, and the bar stops maybe 2 inches from your chest, and that's as far as you can bring your arms into your side, then that's fine. It's a little different for everybody, but it has to do with more where your body's moving, not where the bar goes. So again, in review, think about shoulder blades and arms, and let's do it, instead of separating it, Josh, in terms of this first and then the arms, do all that. You see that? That perfect fluid motion, that's what you're working towards. You may have to start with 2 separate ideas. Okay, where's my shoulder blades, where's my arms? But in the end, it's one fluid motion, arms to the side, and then reaching back up, everything comes up at the top. And notice the one thing he's never doing is swaying back and forth. You'll see sometimes people, if it's too heavy, show them that. They'll do that, and they'll turn it into a big, almost catapulting type of action. Stay real stable the whole time, and you'll see results from this that you never thought possible. This is going to present 2 versions of the pull down, both of them in the narrow grip. And one thing we need to talk about is all pull downs are virtually working the same muscle groups. Let's take a look. Josh, go ahead and have a seat here. We've got the seat adjusted so that when he reaches up, he can't quite reach the bar. And take it from the hooks right here, and you'll notice he's going to have to grab. Yeah, there you go. We're going to use a narrow grip. And I want to show you something. We're going to involve, a lot of people think pull downs equals lats, and that's true. That probably is the most visible, most notable muscle that people are aware of when they're working pull downs or performing pull downs. But pretty much everything on the bottom half of the shoulder, meaning even posterior deltoids, lats, rhomboids, in here, teres, there's just all these muscle groups that people aren't typically aware of, and you don't need to necessarily know their names, but I want you to know there's a lot more going on here than what people give credit to. So, and there will even be elbow flexors involved here. But this is a narrow grip version of the pull down, and he's got kind of an overhanded grip, so his palms are facing the machine. And this will change things primarily in the terms of the path of motion that he's performing. On the more traditional wide grip, where you're out here bringing your arms towards your side this way, he's simply going to be bringing them towards his side from the front. That's about all that will change. So as he reaches up, notice that the weight is pulling him into this stretched out arm straight, shoulders up position. And then the first thing he's going to work on is bringing those shoulder blades down towards his waist, and then follow through with a smooth motion of bringing the arms to the side. And that is exactly where he needed to end, right there where his arms met his side. And he doesn't need to try to pull them further backwards at all, and he doesn't need to worry about where the bar is going. He's not trying to necessarily get the bar to his chest or anything. He's thinking about this to this, because that's what the muscles know about. They don't know about the bar. So watch the fluid motion here, and when his arms go up, his shoulder blades will again separate and move upward. And then once you get the idea of shoulder blades and arms working together, try to make it really one fluid motion. So you almost can't tell which one starts and which one ends. It all happens at the same time. And Josh is doing a great job of that right now, where this and this all at the same time, and they end up smashed and all the way down right here. They reach up at the top. And now, simply showing you a variation would be a reverse grip. Now, if you find, but by trying to grab this bar, it feels funny in your forearm, something doesn't feel right on either of these exercises, well, folks, that's one reason we've got so many variations. It's not that one exercise is magic or works one little thing more than another necessarily. A lot of it has to do with variety for your joints, so that they're not always getting worn in the same way. And some exercises work well for others in terms of setting them up, and some exercises don't, based upon our individual structures. So this may work great for you right here, where you feel something different going on, but don't worry about it. People say, well, it involves more of this and more of that. It's not the main point. Think about your performance here. Again, he's not swaying forward and backward in his whole body. We want to keep nice and straight like he is right here. And again, pinching here while his arms come by his side. reaching up with both his shoulder blades and his arms, and it just doesn't get any better than that right there. Let's take a look at two great versions of the lat pull down, this time using the hand grips, the standard hand grip. And Amy's going to help me go ahead and face the machine and have a seat. Now, you notice that when you use the bar, it is just barely coming down lower than the snap hooks. When you put the handles on, they extend down a little bit lower. And that's one reason we're using the standard ones, because the triple action or triple function hand grip goes even lower than that. But you might have to put the seat a little lower when you're using the hand grips for a pull down than when you've got the bar on there. So we've got this set up pretty well for Amy, and we've got the pulleys in the narrow position. And we're going to do two versions, as I mentioned, one being simply allowing the handles to come down pretty much parallel to each other, like her palms will be facing each other. Now the key to doing the pull down, starting out by sitting up straight and then watching what's happening in the shoulder blades. Notice when she reaches up, those shoulder blades really come up there. And when she comes down, she brings them together, and down is the key. Watch these shoulder blades. They come down towards her waist. Look at that. That is so important, because many times when people do this, they forget their shoulder blades and they're trying to do it all with their arms, and that's not really what we're looking for. Now notice what she also does. She makes a fluid motion so that as the shoulder blades finish, the arms finish. And she's bringing the arms to her side, not behind her, not in front of her, but trying to complete it right where they meet her side. So watch that fluid motion. Also notice that she's not rocking back and forth, trying to pull with her torso or her hips. And that's the perfect motion for this narrow grip pull down. Now, we can simply change it, and it's not going to change a lot, except for some of you, maybe comfort. Maybe it is a neat variation to simply turn the hands so the palms are now not facing each other, but facing you, facing away from the machine. And she's going to maintain that position throughout each and every repetition. Everything else remains unchanged. So there are two great, really nice variations, because when you use a bar, there is some restriction because your hands are stuck on the bar, and the width you choose to put your hands on the bar will create a version of restriction. This is great because she could even alternate them if she wanted to. Look at that. And this is so nice. And if you've never had the chance to try this in a gym, because they always have a bar stuck on a pull down, this is almost like two separate pull down machines in one. And she can alternate. She could do just one side by itself entirely and then finish the set by doing, the next 10 reps on the other side. There's so many ways to take advantage of the Bowflex with exercises you could never do in the gym. Well, I've got two great versions of the pull down for you on the Bowflex that you have a tough time finding in the gym. So start with the seat low enough that you can reach up and not have slack in your arm or in the pulley. So Josh, go ahead and have a seat there facing the machine. And we've got the pulleys in the widest setting on the lat tower with the hand grips. And Josh is going to cross over, and providing this resistance from across his body is something you will not be able to do in most gyms. Now this is going to be kind of a wide version, meaning if you were using a wide lat bar, you'd be performing this motion where your arm is coming from the side and coming towards your body, and that's similar to what we're going to be doing here. So notice that he's moving in this plane. There you go. So all the other rules of the pull down are the same. We're not going to sway forwards and backwards. We're going to take great care to make sure that the shoulder blades are moving with the arms, and they're pinching down and back as his arms are smashing near his sides. And it's going to feel very different and provide you virtually more resistance at the top of the motion, where you're normally balanced and not doing a lot and you're working hard down here. By having the resistance come from either side, you're actually going to be working even at the top as you start the motion. Now, a second version of that where we're still crossing over would be where we move the pulleys in to the narrow setting. And this might actually be the place where you would want to start this exercise. It's going to be a tiny bit easier than the wider pulley setting, at least in terms of the initiation of movement. But everything else is the same. You're still moving in this plane that's across your body, and then elbows out to the side, and then elbows down in. This exercise is traditionally called the stiff arm pull down because you're really trying to keep your arm straight and let all the work occur in the shoulder muscles. Now we sometimes call these the back muscles, but they move your shoulder joint. So Josh is going to come around this way and he's going to stand probably up on the platform because that's going to allow him to get the full range of motion that he needs. We've got the pull down bar on here, but he's going to grab with an overhanded grip at just about shoulder width, maybe a little bit wider honestly. And watch the key here. He keeps his arm straight and without moving anything else in his body, he brings his arms towards his side. Now this is going to get really tough at the bottom down here where those rods are bending all the way. And here's what a lot of people are going to want to do. If you can notice from the side camera over here, go ahead and that's what you're going to want to do. If you've got too much weight and you're not paying attention to what's going on, you're going to want to try to do it with other things. So notice he keeps his rib cage up, which means in essence he's keeping his spine in the same position, and all of it's coming from the shoulder blade muscles, the lats, all those guys moving the shoulders themselves as well. So take great care to make sure that you're performing it with these muscles you're trying to work. And if you start to move anything else in the torso, it's not that it's a bad exercise when you do that, you just may not be emphasizing the muscles that are your goal. This is a version of a stiff arm pull down. Some people even call this a pull over. It's just that a pull over is typically, you know, in a gym, you're laying on a bench, pulling over with a dumbbell. Well, this is a Bowflex version of a pull over where we're going to use the individual handles, the standard handle, and Josh is going to come around to the front. He'll probably end up standing right up on the platform. And we're in the narrow pulley position. And the whole goal is going to be to simply bring the straight arm beside the body. Now, notice the big thing here is that he's keeping his trunk immobile. He's statically holding it still. And show him what happens sometimes when people try to do it wrong, Josh. Yeah, they actually try to almost do like a crunch, like they bend forward. And yeah, see how, now he's not hurting anything necessarily, but he's using so many other muscles that he may not be achieving the goal of this exercise, which is to involve the shoulder blade muscles, the lats, and the lats buddies here, the smaller muscles all around the bottom part of the shoulder, even some rear delt here. And you're going to feel some tricep because you're working hard to keep your arms still the whole time. Now we could actually modify this exercise just a little bit by alternating, and this makes it really fun, and one of the advantages of being able to do things with the individual handles, almost as if you had two separate pull-down machines. And in the gym you can't do that because there's only one cable in the gym most of the time. So this is very different from what you could do with a bar. And he could even just do one side and not the other. Even if he had one arm and he had some surgery on or something, you could do it one really light and the other more challenging. There's so many options on the Bowflex. But I want to show you one other variation where he actually stands off the machine a little bit and bends over a little bit. Now he may not be able to pull all the way to his legs, but the thing that's different is his new starting position. So instead of starting here, he's starting with more opening here, more of a raised arm in essence. So there's a whole different exercise that's simply a variation of the first that allows you to work through an even greater range. So take a look at both of those because they're in a sense complementary. One completes the other. This is the seated lat row, and you can actually do some things in the Bowflex that you can't even do in the gym. But you will see that this might remind you of a gym exercise, a cable row type of movement. We need to make sure that when we're seated, we're keeping the knees bent. That'll help with your spinal position, and put your heels against the platform. Now the pulley position we're going to have in the narrow setting, or I think here we've got the next to the narrowest setting, like the second from the tower here. And you can actually play with that. You probably will not want to use the widest one though. Now the biggest thing I want to bring up in this exercise, as in many others, when you actually reach for the handles, you're starting the exercise. And you need to be concerned about what you're doing and take care and present caution as you reach for the things. So you're not just haphazardly grabbing and jerking and tugging, because you could get hurt before you even start the repetitions. Now next, when you grab the handles, the first version of this I'd like to show you is where you're sitting erect and keeping that virtually erect trunk and posture the whole time. Notice Josh is not moving his head forwards and backwards, he's not moving his trunk forwards and backwards, and he's performing the motion by thinking about this: shoulder blades and arms together. Now watch as his shoulder blades start squeezing together in the back as his arms drag along his side. And this time, because of the forward direction of resistance, try to take your arms back as far as you can without moving your trunk. What many people will do is they'll think that, well, I'm just trying to pull on the handles, and so I'll lean back and that'll pull the handles further. Well, yeah, it'll pull the handles further, but you're asking the lats, the scapular muscles, all of these guys up here to do the work, not necessarily a low back exercise. We've got one of those that you can look at and one of those that you can perform separately. So try to get more out of this, more optimum performance in these muscles that we're looking at on the upper back here by staying in a direct position. Now, if you find that you have trouble figuring out what to do with your shoulder blades, see if you can do it incorrectly where the shoulder blades kind of stay forward and you slouch and just do the arms. You'll see this a lot. You may feel like that you're doing this a lot where the shoulder blades aren't pinching as much. So try your best to, even if you have to do the retraction exercise that's on this DVD or tape first, if you need to figure out what the shoulder blades need to do and try to learn that, and then put it together with this fluid motion called shoulder extension. Now, the next thing is if you're using a really, really light weight, you can perform the motion that you commonly see in the gym where someone reaches forward, bending the low back, and then returns to the erect position. We're going to tell you that as you reach forward, there is some compromise in the spine. The spine can only deal, or the discs specifically, can only deal with about 50% of the original load as you reach forward. So that's why I'm saying it's not a bad thing to do. You have to change the resistance accordingly. And you need to do it slowly if you're going to reach forward. All right, so those are the primary things to be concerned about. Let's take a look at several versions of the triceps pushdown that can be performed using the standard handles. So Amy, step right in here facing the machine. And I'm just going to have her go ahead and grab the handles. We've got the narrow pulley position. And she's going to grab the handles and just bring her upper arms to her sides. Now, she's going to try her best to keep her upper arm right by her side the whole time. And watch how good she is at stabilizing that. And when you've done that correctly, you'll notice the hands moving in an arc. So the name pushdown is almost a little deceiving because if she moves straight up and straight down, you'll notice the upper arm having to move. So you might want to just kind of dismiss the name and make sure you're not letting the upper arm go backward, make sure you're not letting the upper arm go forward, and using a whole lot of other muscles actually taking away from the tricep. So watch how well she does that. Make sure you've got a weight that allows you to do that. And then I'll show you a couple variations. Not only can she perform this more traditional palm facing down type of grip, she could have, of course, change and slip the standard handle to that hammer grip. And you may really like this better than the other one in terms of performance for this tricep, because it's almost as if you're just using the hand in what could be described as almost a more natural way rather than forcing an extreme forearm position. And of course you could do so many things here like alternate. That's just wonderful because on your normal pull down machines where people try to do these exercises in the gym with a single cable, you can't move them separately. So this is really awesome. And you could, of course, just do one side at a time. If I took this one away from Amy, you might be one of those type of people. You just really want to concentrate on only one side, and that might be a good idea, especially in the beginning, because you can pay attention to how well you're holding this upper arm stable or still. So there's three little neat versions, and you could again go back to the more traditional grip where you're facing the hand towards the ground. And something that's not nearly as common, we haven't mentioned it yet, but you could even do kind of an underhanded grip with this thing, and it's a little tougher to hang on to. Doesn't change a thing in the triceps. Although bodybuilding magazines will tell you there's something magic about each one of these, there is absolutely no evidence that when you change the grip direction that it changes what's working, because this muscle appears to be totally unaffected by grip. So a lot of this is just based upon personal preference and creating variation for the sake of creating a little more fun in your workout. This is a more traditional triceps pushdown using a straight bar. So Amy's just going to come and face the machine here, standing up on the platform, and grab the bar with about shoulder width grip. Now very commonly you'll see in the gym these little short handles that require you to grab the bar almost where your hands are touching. This wider bar works out so much better because when you grab a narrow bar, you have to use all these other muscles also. There's nothing wrong with that, but it may not be achieving what you were hoping for, which is maybe just these guys back here. And a wide grip will allow you to isolate this joint more instead of moving everything. So we're going to start by bringing the arm to the side, and then the major goal here is to keep it there and to use nothing else in the process of performing the straightening of the arm. And notice when she keeps that upper arm steady, she's got a nice arc of motion here. We definitely want to stay away from this type of thing where the bar moves straight up and down and she moves her upper arm forward or backwards. We want to stay away from all that so-called cheating type of stuff and be really strict and controlled here. And you will know it when you're doing this right because you will feel this right in the back of your arm working so hard. And make sure this last part right here, see how she straightens all the way out? That's hard. That is hard to do. And you're going to want to stop a little bit early or move out of that position. Take the time to squeeze it all the way to the fully straightened position, and you'll get so much more out of it. And the other thing you'll finally see is sometimes as people start to fatigue, they'll start to bend forward and use their trunk to push the whole bar down. So watch for all those things and try to get it just in the area where you really want to work. Have you ever noticed in the gym when someone goes to do a tricep exercise, instead of grabbing one of the metal handles, they use a rope? And this rope is typically attached in its center with knots or some kind of attachment on the end of it that keeps your hands from sliding off. But the rope creates kind of a V. And as the person performs the exercise, the hands go from near the center and they can spread out. Well, we can do this on the Bowflex, and it's even more efficient than the rope in the gym. So take a look. Josh is going to come around here, and he's going to end up with kind of a hammer grip with these things. There you go. And he crossed over. So it's one of those things where the left hand grabs the pulley from the right or the handle from the right and vice versa. It's going to allow his hands to come towards center, but as he straightens his arms, they're going to spread out to right below his elbows. So the motion he's performing looks like this. And because the cables are crossing, it is resisted within that plane of that V that he's performing. So this is a really cool exercise. Now, he's not necessarily letting his hands cross, right? His hands are just kind of meeting near the center. And he's doing a great job of the very thing we need to do in every triceps exercise, which is maybe keep this upper arm stable. So it's staying pretty still. It's not following him forward. It's not following him backwards. And that's going to be the key to attaining the muscle that you want right here. Take a look at what Josh has got there. And he's not trying to push down with his trunk and all that other stuff, that we could call cheating, in essence trying to take the effort away from the muscles you're concentrating on and putting it in the rest of your body. So try this because it may end up being one of your very favorite triceps exercises on the Bowflex. This is the seated triceps extension. And I think historically in some of the magazines and even the gyms, people have referred to this as the French press, just kind of an old traditional name. But it's really neat on the Bowflex. The first thing you have to do is adjust the seat height because that's going to determine, when you look at the length of the handle and everything, it's going to determine whether you get to move down into the range as far as you want because the exercise is going to be performed overhead. So go ahead and grab your handles once you've adjusted the seat and checked all that out. Grab the handles the way you normally would, curl them into your shoulder, and then all you have to do is bring that elbow up in the air and you're in a great position to start. Notice Josh is positioned so that his palms are facing the ceiling. That's the first version of this. This is the cross triceps extension, and you're going to take the left hand and use the pulley on the opposite side. So you'll actually have to reach over maybe with the right hand, grab hold. There you go. Now, I'm going to highly recommend that you use the next to the narrowest pulley setting. Maybe that's number 2 if you're counting from inside here. And the position that you put your upper arm in is going to determine whether this cable is going to bother you or not. And what I mean by that is if you're too low, you're going to see that as Josh straightens out his arm, it rubs on his shoulder. If you're too high when he straightens out his arm, it gets close to his head. So we really want you to do this in the most comfortable place. And if you get your arm just right, notice it doesn't touch against anything at all. It'll rub right in towards his neck, but never get really close to it. So kind of mess with that and be real careful. And one of the keys to maintaining that is maintaining the upper arm position. Once you choose it, don't let this upper arm go outward as you straighten. Don't let it move up and down. Don't let it move towards your head. Try your best to keep it there. And that is almost always going to be the key to most of these triceps exercises, is holding this upper arm relatively still. Now, grip-wise on this, he can choose kind of this hammer grip where his little finger is kind of leading the way. And it's a really nice grip. We're using the standard grip. Or he started out with a supinated grip or kind of palm towards the pulley kind of a grip. And that'll work fine too. Whichever one you prefer, you can even alternate them. But the big thing here, watch the upper arm, get everything lined up, and keep that cable moving in a nice, smooth, safe place. This is the seated biceps curl, and there's a lot more than biceps working here because everything that helps to bend your elbow is working. There's some forearm musculature, there's some muscles beneath the biceps, brachialis, for example, if you're concerned about those names. But you're seated, and the seat height will affect things a little bit. In other words, if it's too low, you may not be able to straighten your arms out all the way due to the length of the handles and that kind of thing. So mess with that a little bit. If it's too high, then you're going to be way up in the air and having to reach down further than you need to grab the handles. Grabbing the handles is the next thing we're going to look at. Take care when you bend over and grab that handle. For example, when Josh does that, he's nice and slow and paying attention to what his back's doing. Not that you can keep it perfectly straight to do that, but that you're not just jerking and yanking on things. So keep control over your body. Then, once you grab the handle and you're ready to go, you're basically keeping your palms forward for this first version anyway, and then making sure your upper arm stays where it starts. And that's going to be very important because the common thing to do, let your upper arm go back as you start to curl. You see people do that. They kind of let their arm go back, and as they get to the top, they kind of bring it forward. Yeah, and see, when you do that, you're really losing a lot of the tension on the muscle groups, the elbow flexors that you're trying to work. And that kind of defeats the purpose. So pay close attention to keeping this upper arm in one place, and especially at the top of the motion there. Don't bring it forward. At least not right now anyway. There you go. Josh is doing a great job. Now with this exercise, there's so many things you could do. You could alternate them the way Josh is. You could actually alternate at the same time so that one's going up while the other's coming down. A little coordinated effort there. You could do them both simultaneously, both up and both down at the same time. So there's a lot of neat options. And now we can actually make virtually a completely new exercise by changing the grip. So if Josh goes to the hammer grip where you slide that handle on the webbing, and now the thumb's going straight up against the resistance, the thumb's straight up in the air. And it's all the same muscles. What you're asking for is a little bit of a different contribution from each of those muscles. And it's said that with this exercise that this muscle here, the brachialis, brachioradialis, and even the other guy, the one below the bicep, the brachialis, they may be working a little harder than before. So there's slight differences. And you may also notice that you might have to change the resistance when you make some of these variations occur. So don't be surprised if that happens. And one thing that must be said relative to every exercise on the Bowflex, don't ever try to take what you've done in the gym before. If you've ever worked out there before, and let's say you use 30-pound dumbbells on this exercise, do not assume that you can use 30 pounds on the Bowflex. This is so important on every exercise. Start from scratch and figure out the resistance appropriate to these exercises on this machine. Although virtually every arm curl ends up being called a biceps curl, there are so many things working inside here. So we're just going to call them arm curls. And the first version we're going to show you in the standing position. Oh, by the way, to get in the standing position, you had to not only adjust the pulleys to the width you chose or you wanted, which is probably not the widest, somewhere in between there, but you also had to bend down and pick up the handles. And remember, every time you bend down to get in position, to grab the weight, make sure you're taking care of how you pick this thing up. Now, next, I'll show you the first one. She's just going to keep her palm facing the front the whole time, facing forward. And the thing she's going to really watch here is that her upper arm doesn't move. Now, she's chosen a position that I think is great, where her arm is not exactly straight up and down with the world. It's slightly angled forward. She could do it with her arm straight up and down and keep it there. Well, this is great too, where it's actually very slightly angled forward, But the thing that's awesome is how she's keeping it there the whole time. So you need to watch that. Make sure that you can hold your upper arm wherever you start is where it stays. And she's also not bending her whole body around, trying to really tug on the weight with every other muscle in her whole body from head to toe. So watch that as well. Make sure you choose your weight appropriately and understand the concept of control. Now we can make a nice little change here by going to a hammer position where you simply slide the handle on the webbing, and now she's leading the way with the top part or thumb part of her hand, and we've changed the contribution of the elbow flexors, although they're all still working. Same goal of keeping her upper arm stable. And a final version where it's called a reverse curl, and she's more in a pronated grip. You may have heard that term before, but the palm is facing the ground, and that's the main thing there. And she's trying her best to keep her wrist pretty straight, and she's keeping her upper arm stable once again. So all of those are wonderful variations. You may actually find that you have to change the weight or the power rods between those different exercises, because if we were really using a super challenging load for her on the first one, we might not be that strong on some of these other variations. So pay close attention to that. This next curl is kind of a hybrid. It's kind of a combination of what you'd see in the gym as a concentration curl and even a Scott curl or preacher curl, which is performed more with your arm on a bench. So Josh, let's show him. It's one arm at a time, and you're going to grab right hand, right handle, and you're going to kind of twist so that you can actually put your upper arm on the bench. Now the key is, a lot of people say, oh, my arm's resting on the bench, I don't have to worry about it anymore, the bench is taking care of supporting it. That's not entirely true. It's more of a reference point than it is true support, meaning if you're doing it wrong, show them what you see in the gym sometimes, Josh, where people are kind of rocking around with their arm moving all over the bench. You're still going to have to support this thing yourself. In fact, you might want to consider smashing your tricep more against it and your shoulder back, and even bringing your elbow away from it a little bit. But the big thing is that he's holding all this still, just like most of your other curls. And he can also choose a variety of grips, fully supinated like he is right there. He could go to hammer. He could do all those kinds of things. Let me show you one other variation that you can explore. I don't know which one's going to work best for you. Where he actually steps behind this pad and puts his leg behind this corner right here. Some people might like this a little better, and without a doubt there's not going to be any difference in terms of performance and what you're going to get out of it. The most important thing is that you're comfortable with it. So again, holding this relatively still and not rocking around on the pad is going to be your key for this little hybrid movement. Probably the most traditional and most common biceps, or more importantly elbow flexor exercise, is with a bar. But there are actually some considerations when using a straight bar that you don't have to worry about when you're using the individual handles. But let's take a look at those. Josh, go ahead and stand in here. We're going to use the pulleys from the platform here, and we've put the same bar on that you would use for squats or something like that. And the first thing we need to look at, so many times you'll hear the instructions from magazines or TV shows or something to grab the bar at shoulder width, and that is a huge mistake, monstrous, because at shoulder width you can't turn your palms all the way to the front. And let's take a look at Josh. When he turns his palms all the way to the front, we have this angle in the arms that is in everybody to varying degrees called the carrying angle. So when he grabs this bar at shoulder width, he's actually putting a twist in his arms that's going to be real uncomfortable and create almost a shin splint. Have you ever had that before in the beginning? Almost a shin splint type of sensation, a deep bone kind of ache, because the bar is trying to twist you to a place you're not supposed to be. So you simply look at what the body says about it. It says, hey, I need to be a little bit wider here. So shoulder width is not going to be what we're looking for. A couple inches wider than shoulder width is it. So when he grabs the bar with that in mind, watching his back when he lifts it and all that good stuff. There. And it's not about turning your hands outward. It's just simply about turning them to the front and see what's available in you. Stand in the mirror, take a look. And that's going to be your grip width here. And now it's going to be so much more comfortable for him. And when he performs his curl, he's got the similar considerations to any other curl, for that matter, any other tricep exercise, where the main thing is what he does with his upper arm. And he does a great job of keeping it steady. Show him what happens with some people when they're making some mistakes here and their arm moves. See, that was so perfect for how to do it wrong. And it's pretty common, though, where the arm goes back and then go forward. One more time on that for the side camera, Josh, where the cheating thing. See that whole thing? Now that didn't hurt anything, it wasn't dangerous, but it probably didn't create the emphasis that you want in these arm muscles. So the next thing is that I want to show you on the Bowflex that's really cool. You see, normally when you're doing this exercise and you got a free weight, a barbell in your hand or a dumbbell, when you get to the bottom, you're not doing anything. It's balanced, it's just hanging there. Well, the cool thing about this, if you could see the angle of the cable, it's actually, when he's at the bottom, it's actually pulling backwards a little bit. And you can even adjust that further by moving that pulley back one notch towards his leg. Well, that slightly backward angle, or he could even try this, take one notch forward, just a step. Right there. Now see that angle, how that's pulling backwards on him? You're only going to get this on the Bowflex because that backward angle is creating some tension from the very beginning. So he's going to be working harder right here from the start, and of course continuing that all the way through with his perfect form. So you can potentially get a better workout on the Bowflex for this exercise than any gym you could walk into. For the reverse grip version of a barbell curl, your hand grip is really easy. You see, when we're doing the normal barbell curl where your palms facing forward, we have this thing called a carrying angle that requires you to have a wider than shoulder width grip. Here, where your palm is facing down, you can honestly do a shoulder width grip without concern. It will not affect a thing. It will not bother you a bit. So Josh has got about shoulder width there, and we're simply going to try our best to keep the upper arm from not moving. We've got a little bit lighter weight on this from maybe the traditional barbell curl where your palms are forward, because we've put the arm in a position where it's not quite as strong by twisting the forearm over like that. So one more time, big thing, holding still, not swaying back and forth in the body, and this is a great variation. And sometimes I wish people would almost start with this. We spend so much time doing the more traditional movements. These variations are just as important many times. This is another version of an arm extension or triceps exercise, but it's traditionally called the kickback. And so we're simulating something you may have seen on videotapes or in books or magazines or in the gym, and we're doing a great job over on the Bowflex. Amy's going to come right around here. We're going to do one arm at a time, and there's your handle. And I'm going to start with the hammer version of this. So you're going to take the standard grip and slip it through so that it's all lined up with the cable. And then she's going to bend forward, keeping a pretty nice position here, and then bring this upper arm back just about parallel to the ground. Now again, the key is try to hold this here as we straighten out. Now, once you get the idea of holding your upper arm steady, there's something you might notice. Because of how far away from the machine she is, if you're this far away, you might notice that the rods are bending a lot. And remember, the further they bend, the harder it is. So if this is too hard at the end, but it seems like it's just, through this part of the range, seems like it's really easy, here's what you might try. You could either take the hand off of, she was supporting herself on the bench right here. You could put it up here on this bar, crossbar, or even, she could even take her forearm and rest it across the top of the pad. But the whole goal of those changes is simply to get her closer to the machine so we're not going through as much bend in the rod. And doesn't that feel easier? Mm-hmm. So obviously, if you wanted the opposite, if you wanted it harder, you could scoot back a little bit with all the, the way she started. But there are also alternate hand positions here that some people feel are, valuable as completely different exercises. They're not going to change what's happening in your tricep, but they are nice alterations. Go ahead and bend forward here again, Amy. And let's see that she's got her palm facing backwards this time. And she goes to full extension. She does not stop short. She fully squeezes and contracts this tricep the whole time. And another variation would be to turn the palm towards the machine entirely. So she'd be leading the way with her knuckles. And some people may find that a little tough to hold on to. And as we've mentioned with a lot of these variations, you might have to change the actual resistance you use as you change the forearm or grip position. But the key, again, remains to try to hold this still and go to full extension. I love this next exercise because it's so uncommon. We're going to actually do an arm curl on one side and an arm extension on the other side. We're going to call this arm opposition because the directions of resistance are coming from completely opposite directions. And you should really try this. It's very uncommon to find this in a gym or someone performing it in a gym, but we think it's a major thing you could do on a Bowflex. So jump right in here, Josh, and go ahead and grab that bottom one first. So he's got the curl portion of it, and then he's just going to reach up easily to get the arm extension resistance. Now his whole goal here is to do them at the same time. So there he goes. Everything he learned from every other tricep exercise he's ever addressed and bicep exercise he's applying here, meaning the upper arm is not moving on either side. He's extending one arm as he's curling the other arm. Notice he is leaning back against the back pad here. He's got his rear against the back pad, but he doesn't necessarily have his torso against the back pad. So that's actually a key point that you might want to look at. Now he can also do some other things that are kind of strange. For example, go ahead and leave this here and take that one down. Go straighten your arm down. There you go. Now move them both at the same time. So you're going up at the same time and down at the same time. There are a lot of little coordinated effort types of things you can do inside of your head that differentiate the challenges. So it's more about the motor pattern and what's going on inside your brain and your neurological system, not just what's going on in your muscles. And that's some of the benefit to these kinds of exercises. This exercise could be called upper body opposition because it's not just going to be like a curl and an arm extension at the same time. It's going to be a pull down and a shoulder press at the same time. Now there are a couple of situations here you're going to have to take a look at before you choose which parts of the machine you're going to use. You're going to always use the lat tower on one side, all right? But notice something. When Josh reaches up and grabs this, he's got a little slack here. Now we're not going to worry about this right now, but when you're at home, you may have to adjust the seat lower. Now as you adjust the seat lower, that may create a situation over here to where you're almost, imagine if the seat was low, you'd be starting up real high on this side in order to keep the slack out of it. So you may find that if you have to put the seat all the way at the bottom in order to do your pull down, you may end up using your shoulder press from the platform pulley using the adjustable webbing to extend the handle up to where you can grab it. So just keep that in mind as you set up the machine. We're going to go ahead and use it this way because a lot of people will be able to use it this way using the crossbar pulley for the shoulder press and the lat tower for the pull down. So now everything is going to be similar to previous exercises where these were done either all shoulder press or all pull down, meaning he's reaching up and extending his arm, and as he comes down this other side, he's bringing that shoulder blade down while he brings his arm down to his side. Remember all those things, or look back and review the individual exercises of pull down and shoulder press to get that information. Now, the one thing we're going to make sure that we're going to do with this is change sides in order to get the opposite directions of resistance for these other sides. So eventually he will need to do a left arm pull down and a right arm overhead press. And the big thing we can do here as we increase the ranges of motion by lowering the seat and that kind of thing, he'll be able to even have slight movements in his trunk as he pulls and pushes. And that little bit of trunk movement is not a bad thing either, because that's actually part of the normal movement of the spine in association with very specific movements of the upper extremity. Let's take a look at a couple of wrist exercises, and we're going to take a look at wrist flexion and wrist extension. And one of the easiest ways to do this, you're going to be standing on the platform, and honestly you could face either direction. We've just chosen to have Amy actually put her hips against the pad right here while staying away from the pad on the top part. So this is still vertical here in the trunk. And she's going to go ahead and bring her arms up to kind of a midpoint in what would be a curl. So she's going to maintain a position of elbow flexion where the forearms are parallel to the ground. And then she's got her palms down, so she's prepared to resist wrist extension. So bringing the wrist into extension is what's being resisted here. We're using the platform pulleys in probably one of the middle two settings. Not the narrowest, not the widest. But you can experiment with that a little bit. And she could do this not only at the same time, she can alternate and all that good stuff. And a lot of people say, well, why would I even want to do such a little thing? This is not going to help me burn fat. This is not going to help me get in great shape or anything, but I got to tell you, I've met so many people over the years that due to weakness and inability to control wrist and that kind of things, they end up with a variety of ailments from carpal tunnel to tendonitis in the elbow that's often called tennis elbow. And these things really can make a difference in the prevention of some of those ailments. Now, if you're going to use these as part of the rehab for one of those problems, you really need to go back and consult a doctor, physical therapist, and those kinds of people, because this may be a little too advanced depending on the stage of rehabilitation you are with those ailments. But the nice little thing that we can do is simply change the position to a palm up, and now we have resisted flexion of the wrist on both sides. Now the key here is always going to be holding this part steady, and that may actually create some challenge up in here, as you can see all these elbow flexors working. But if she was letting all this forearm stuff move around all at the same time, she would be decreasing the optimal performance of the muscle she's really trying to work. So go real light and pay attention to what you're trying to accomplish. This is called the resisted dip, and where the name comes from is the old dip bars that we had in the gyms and at schools and that kind of thing, where someone would jump onto the bar and lift their entire body weight between these two handles. Well, we can simulate that on the Bowflex, but the nice thing is we don't have to use our whole body weight. We can work up to that by incrementally adding power rods. So the key here is going to be getting into position. Amy's going to end up being with her hips against the pad, but not leaning against the pad with her torso. Notice how she just grabs the handles from above and then kind of rotates them into position down here. Now, you may find that the easiest way for you to get in position is actually to try that adjustable webbing strap that we use so commonly for squats and things. This could be another use of it, where you put it up here, and by extending it, it'll bring the handle down closer to where you could just maybe grab it from here. So play around with that nice adjustable tool that comes with your Bowflex Xtreme 2. So her goal here is to maintain position of the body and slowly let her elbows bend backwards. Now, if she needs to control this motion, and she's stopping with about 50 degrees of extension occurring, a lot of times people think that more is better in terms of range of motion, and that is not at all true. Because this weight, and especially if you had more weight on there, would try to pull you into even more extension where your shoulders were coming way up. And your shoulder joint does have limitations. So you need to make sure that you're not just trying to rip your shoulder apart in an attempt to perform some exercise. Control it, and then control the push right straight back down to where arm is in a perfectly straight line again. But the important part of this is controlling that top part, and you might not be able to move as far as Amy. She's got tremendous range. She's not violating her own shoulder range though. She's not going to an extreme. You may only be able to move this far. And if that's the case, you might actually push a little bit forward on this exercise and end up out here a little bit to even allow any motion at all. Because if she couldn't lift her elbows very far up behind her, she'd have to move more forward in order to get anything out of it. And again, we could do the alternating movements with this because we have two separate cables. We have all those options on a Bowflex. Let's take a look at a crunch, a resisted crunch for the abdominals. Now it's going to be in the seated position, and you're going to use the crossbar pulleys for this that I would move in all the way to the narrow position. Now, you're going to need to take a look at a variety of seat heights and see what you think is the most beneficial for you. Because as you adjust the seat height, not only will it change your relationship to the resistance in the pulleys, it also changes your relationship to the back pad. You'll notice the back pad has a little curve to it down there, and that may change how it feels against your spine. So take a look at that, and we kind of decided for Amy that this was going to be perfect for her. And then she can go ahead and grab the pulley on that side and just curl it right in, and I'll help her with that one. Now she can just bring those across her chest and let them rest on her shoulders. She could, if some people are more comfortable holding it with opposite hands, but this is a pretty easy way to get in position right here. Now, choose a weight that's going to allow you to perform a perfect crunch, and realize a crunch is not like a sit-up. In other words, we're not asking her to move at her hips all the way out to her knees like that. Her pelvis will not move. In fact, in her head, what she's thinking is not so much move forward against the weight, but this. Think about taking her rib cage towards her pelvis. And that's what happens when your spine bends, and that's what all these muscles are trying to do. And many times you'll hear on TV, especially on infomercials, where they'll talk about, oh, you're working upper abs or lower abs or obliques all separately. It is impossible. When you are performing this, your brain is bringing in or employing every muscle that can perform spinal flexion. And folks, that is upper and lower rectus, as well as the obliques on both sides. So don't worry about trying to target things. Worry about doing it correctly, which is thinking about exactly what she's doing. Watch this move straight down to the pelvis, and that's all she's concerned about. And the resistance is key. A lot of people think, oh, I don't want to use resistance on this. It's going to give me a big stomach like a big muscle. It's not the way it works, folks. When you have resistance, you end up with muscles like Amy's got here, these little rows of muscles. That's what matters. Now, if you want to get rid of fat around the middle, which is an important part, that's going to come from diet. That's going to come from other activities that burn calories. This is important for building the muscle. It's not only key to looks for some people, to aesthetics, but also key to help to support your spine for all the other exercises you're going to do. This version of a crunch has historically been called an oblique crunch. And that leads people to believe that the only thing that's working are the oblique muscles, the ones on the sides. And that's not exactly true, because your entire rectus is working. There's no way to get it out of the picture. Your upper and lower rectus, these muscles that run up and down the middle that create this thing called a six-pack, those are working also. It's just that the motion is more oblique. Oblique simply means diagonal. So the motion is a crunch performed at a diagonal, and that's a much more accurate way to envision the name here. Now we're going to use resistance only from one side, and Josh is going to reach across his body and grab it. And notice I have very specifically chosen this setting that's almost the narrowest, and you could try the narrow one if you wanted to, but as strong as he is, he's going to get a little more resistance by changing the angle of resistance, and that's an important thing to learn about Bowflex, and all these angles we can change by the pulleys. If you want to alter the way it feels and alter the amount of resistance, you don't have to just run back here and add power rods. Very many times changing the angle relative to the body or the plane of motion will completely change the amount of resistance you're having to fight. So this is that second hole from the narrowest. And then he's just letting this rest across his chest here. And the motion is going to be, as I mentioned, in a diagonal. But it's still a crunch. He's not moving away. He's not moving his whole body away from that back pad. Can you see that? He's really concentrating not so much on, gosh, I got to tug on the weight or I got to move the weight. He's thinking, what am I moving the weight with? What is going on right here? And he's tightening and thinking about taking this part of the rib cage over to this other side so that the movement is about the contraction and release of what's going on in here. And you can see that his rectus is working. To say that this is not working would just be ludicrous. But at the same time, you can see a lot that's going on over here. And all these muscles were involved in a regular crunch. This is just a wonderful variation for creating a little more specificity, not only within a motion, but within contributions of muscular effort. This is not spot reducing. You cannot do this to get rid of love handles as much as the world would like you to believe that. You've got to watch what you eat. You've got to burn calories as well as build muscle if you want to get to where you can see these great muscles you're working on here. Of all the trunk exercises, they're all incredibly valuable. They're all incredibly important, but some would argue that this is the most important, looking at trunk rotation and all the variations that we can create, especially here on the Bowflex. So we're going to have you do this exercise in a standing position, facing one side. And I've got the pulley right here, and you could try various pulley positions. I've got it the second from the narrowest position. And we're going to grab with both hands. In the first version of this, I'm going to ask Josh to bring his arms to his sides, because the further you hold the weight away from you, the heavier that weight is going to feel to you. So we're going to start with his arms by his side, and it's a real simple little trunk rotation, and he's even going to try to keep his legs and pelvis from turning. So all of the motion, which will now be pretty short because of a short range, because I've eliminated all this down here, but it's all in the trunk and spine, okay? And he's not trying to push with his hands or anything else. They only move as far as his trunk will let him move. Now we can immediately make that harder as he gets more advanced by straightening his arms a little bit. Doesn't that feel harder?
Oh, yeah.
Because just holding it, and you know this already, you know that if you hold a weight out here versus hold it in here, a weight gets harder the further it is. So right off the bat, he didn't have to go change the power rods. He used mechanics and levers to make this a little bit harder. And he's not just doing an arm thing, he's doing it with the trunk. The arms never move any further than what the trunk can. And he could even alter, he could choose a new starting position where he's pointing off at a diagonal to start with, which would change the range through which he's able to work, because now you can see that he can, instead of going from neutral into the turn, he can start from a turn and come back to neutral. Can you see that? So that's a nice little complementary adjustment right there that can be made. And then the next thing we can do is incorporate some of the lower extremity rotation with it. So you'll notice he's able to turn further because it's not just trunk this time. He's incorporating some of the lower extremity. So these are all very different things, but the big point is he understands the control, and he's not going fast, and he can manipulate. He can say, on this one I'm moving the legs, on this one I'm not. If you're going fast and flying through it, there's going to be 100 things happen that you're not even aware of. So take the time to get control over this, and I'll show you a wonderful a change in the motion. Notice the pulley is a little bit lower than his hands. Let's move at the angle of the cable and the pulley, up at an angle. Now this is great because not only is he using every muscle in his body that rotates his trunk, but there's a little trunk extension involved in that too. And these combinations of motions can be among the most important for everything surrounding your spine, not only to look better and to feel better, but to protect the spine and make it so that you can potentially be injury-free in your spinal area throughout your entire life. If you have any back problems with any of these exercises, but especially the trunk exercises, you'll either need to modify what you do or stay away from it entirely or get the advice of someone who's an expert in creating exercises around a back problem. So be concerned about that. Again, none of these are spot reducing. This is about strengthening and control over motion. Let's take a look at the leg extension, which of course is going to use the leg attachment. And the first thing to be concerned with is how you put it in there. So review that section at the very, very beginning of this tape or DVD. And next is, once you put it in there, there are multiple holes inside of this thing or settings that will totally determine whether it's going to line up with your knee correctly or not. So the first thing to notice is that if this thing is out too far, you'll recognize that by the fact that when you wrap your legs around here, around the top pad, and put them under the bottom one, and it seats you back against here where your calf is smashed against this pad, as you can see right here. Well, if it's too far forward, then you may not be able to get your bottom all the way back where you want it and be able to lean back against the pad, the backrest, without kind of reclining. So you could move it backwards a little bit to try to get more comfortable. The thing that's probably of greater concern is if you have it positioned in a setting that's too far back for your femur length or your thigh length. That could be a problem, and the way you'll see that, there's two ways. First of all, if it's too far back, then when you sit down and you're against the back pad and you put your legs around the top pad and under the bottom one, then your knee is going to stick way out front. In fact, your calf may not even touch this thigh pad. And if your calf can't touch it because your femur, your knee is sticking out so far, then we need to readjust this. The other thing you'll notice once you start the exercise, go ahead and straighten out, Josh. Notice when Josh performs this, that the geometry of this leg attachment was designed ideally so that when you're lined up perfectly, go up and down for me. Notice that this pad on his ankles, can you guys see that? This pad on the ankles does not roll up and down his shin as he performs the exercise. Well, if this was positioned incorrectly and it was too far back, you would probably find this pad rolling up maybe a half an inch or even an inch from its original starting place on his ankle or on his shin. So if you can detect either one of those things, you need to make an adjustment before you ever really do the exercise with a significant load or a challenging weight. Now, once you've got that set, there's one more setting. This lower pad, go ahead and rest there for a minute, Josh. This lower pad has 3 holes of adjustment, and you can put it in here, you know, if he was a little bit shorter in the lower leg. There's a longer position. If you're unsure about which one to use, maybe you should use the default position of always putting it in the shorter one. And I say that because regardless of your leg length, the lower one may end up being better for most people's knees because of the forces and how it alters them on the knee. So you can put it in a different place if you think it's more comfortable. But if you're unsure, always err on the side of putting it in the one that's closest to the axis here. All right, now, actual performance. Setting up your body. Josh has done a really good thing right here in that his kneecap is right on top. Straighten out for a second for me, Josh, and hold it. Sometimes people sit on this machine and they roll to the outside. And you'll notice that their kneecap, if you look down from the top, maybe you can see here well, is that I can see more knee on the inside than I can the outside. And what we want to do is roll it so the patella or the kneecap is right smack dab on top of there. You can see the same amount of knee on both sides of it, and then you got to keep it there the whole time. After that, you're pretty much ready to go. Keep it there the whole time. Now the key to this is not just kicking. I've seen so many people think that they're playing soccer or something on this, and they're just abrupt and throwing and launching and kicking the whole thing. Be slow, be intent, and start by tightening here. And think about tightening this hard enough to make extension occur. Now, I would advise most of you, if it doesn't cause any discomfort, go ahead and go to full extension, because this direction of resistance is not forcing you into extension, it's trying to force you away from extension. So you can go all the way to a full contraction here if it's comfortable. If you feel anything funny in your knees, you should stop, as we've mentioned on every exercise. And some of you will occasionally feel grinding and that kind of thing in your knee. Well, folks, that's the beginning of arthritis, and it happens in virtually all of us by a certain age. And so try to position yourself in a way, use a weight that minimizes the amount of grinding and that kind of thing you hear. And you also may want to consult a physician if that's really bothering you a lot. Okay, not just pain, but also the noises you hear sometimes in your knees. But anyway, this is a great exercise. It will not necessarily help you lose fat from your thighs any more than any other exercise will. But building this muscle is going to be incredibly important, and it's a great adjunct to some of the other leg exercises that are available on this DVD. Now the squat is a complicated exercise, so pay close attention because there's an awful lot of things to look at. It's a great exercise though, so in the end it'll be worth it. Now we're going to start, I've got the webbing, the adjustable straps on here, because that's going to allow us to adjust the range at which, not only at which Josh can move, but also the ease with which he can get under this thing. So right now I've got them set to their greatest length, and that'll allow him to get under it pretty easy, because we're going to make some decisions before we put a really challenging weight on here. We're going to want to find out, you're going to want to find out how deep you can go in the squat, the range of motion. And like every range of motion, make that progressive. Please don't just assume, oh, I've done squats my whole life, so I know I can go to a certain depth. This is different. The resistance on here feels different. The bar may even feel different. Please back off and learn everything as if you'd never done it before. It's the only way to make everything incredibly safe, all right? So, his positions, when he ends up doing this squat, he's going to have the bar up high, and he's got his hands, and that's going to be there's different positions of the hands for everybody based upon your shoulder range of motion. He probably, with his range, could actually grab a little narrower. Most of you, unless you absolutely have to grab way out here, I'm not sure I would. I think having a little closer in grip with your hands is going to allow you to keep your shoulder blades closer together rather than being out wide and all protracted and spread out. His spinal position is the key. Positions are always the key. Positions are more important than the actual motions. And the spinal position and not letting his spine flex is going to be really important. All right. Now, the squatting motion itself is going to be performed, and we're going to do it without even any weight on it yet, by having his bottom stick out, his knees are going to go slightly forward, and his chest or rib cage stays virtually up and out. You need to practice that over and over and over. Now, what we can do is slowly have him lower, and I'm going to take up the slack, and you can either get some help or take it off, adjust it evenly on each side, and then try it again. But there's how we start we determine our range of motion, because I offered him a short range right here. We took about 6 inches of slack out, and he can practice a short range squat. This is perfect because he's not going very deep, and he can figure out, hey, how's my back aligned? How's my leg aligned? How's this feel? Am I letting my rib cage drop, which is letting my spine cave in and round on me? Now see, the next thing we got to take a look at, watch right here. See how his feet are a little wider than shoulder width, and this new Bowflex Xtreme 2 has a great platform for this, and they're also pointed outward. As you move your feet wider, you've got to also change their angle. Do you see that? And he's got his toes very slightly wider than his heels, and his thighs are going to go the same direction that his feet are pointing. This is critical. And every time he's done this, I've watched over the past couple reps, and he's done it perfectly every time. What you have to pay attention to is that you're not letting your knees go to the center. Can you show them that? How knees, not necessarily forward, but how some people go down, their knees go towards the center. Yeah, some people do this. And it's not just a male versus female thing, although some people say it's more common in females to head that direction. And there's a lot of reasons why this can happen. It can be actually occurring in the foot, in the knee, in the hip. But the thing I would like for you to do is use your control to point your knees out in the direction of your toes. So these angles are congruent, going the same direction. And once you get pretty good at making sure all these things are happening, then we can add some more range. And I'm going to just make it a little bit lower on you. And how deep you end up going in your squat is going to be a function of not only your control, but the amount of weight you choose, and things like, how's your knee doing? If you've got arthritis, if you've got knee problems, you're going to need to alter all these things. But that's not a bad squat right there. Some people say you have to squat to parallel and that kind of stuff. Parallel meaning when your thigh gets parallel to the ground. But we're just short of that here. He's squatting to a roughly 90-degree bend in the knee, which is short of parallel. He would get a great workout from this. There's not any reason to go deeper. If you have a goal that specifically requires you to go deeper, just realize you're doing so at your own risk. And you may like that feeling even, but it's not necessarily more beneficial. If you honestly think it's more beneficial for your goal to go deeper, then go ahead and do it with caution. One of the nice things about the Bowflex is as you're going deeper, the rods are bending less and less. So at the top is where the rods bend the most and where you're getting the most resistance. That's a nice resistance profile for this exercise. Let's take a look at some calf exercises. We've actually got two variations we can perform here on the Bowflex Xtreme 2. And then we're going to use the platform down here in two ways, not only for the pulleys and their resistance, but this is also going to be the block or slight step on which we're going to perform the range of motion. So Josh, come around here. The first one we're going to do is just a single leg movement. And there's a reason for that, because in order to hold the resistance, you're going to use one arm, and just go ahead and put your left foot up on here. Yeah, and then we'll have the weight in the left hand. And then he's going to use his right hand to help stabilize. And the reason we're starting with this one is because the next version is going to require some stability from you, some active support and active balance. But you notice right here the key things. His whole ball of his foot is up on the platform. Can you see that? So it's not just his toes. Some people call this a toe raise, and we're not raising the toes, we're actually raising the heel. And the whole ball of your foot is up on here. And he's controlling down as far as he can go without just resting on the floor. And then he's lifting up. Now, if you really want to get something out of this exercise like never before, then don't just rock around. Take great effort in going real slow for me, Josh. Think about lifting the heel, pulling it towards the knee, and go as high as you can every time. Do you see that little bit of extra right there? Can't promise you calves like Josh's, but I can promise you a sensation you never had before. Because most people either don't work calves or they really do the easiest part of the range and they don't get a lot out of them. So take your time to do it right and go all the way up. Now when you get pretty good at balancing and that kind of thing, you could do both sides by grabbing both handles. Be careful how you pick them up. Put the balls of your feet up there on the platform, and then real slowly bring your heels up towards your knees, and then real slowly go down, because so many times people get up to the top and they just fall out of this top position. Use those muscles. If you're going to work them 100% of the time, all the way up, and every inch on the way down, make them do their job. There you go. I want to show you two hip extension exercises, and they're a little bit different. They will work virtually the same muscles with slightly different contributions from those guys. So the first one, and to hook this up, you've got to take a look, because you're using the triple function grip and putting it through that arch cuff, and you need to review through the very beginning of the DVD or the tape and see how to set that up, because that's critical, and it's a great function for this hand grip that's actually very rare. You won't find very many hand grips in the world that are able to do this, but it's so useful on these exercises we're performing right now, because if you just put an ankle cuff up here, it'll want to slide up your leg, and this keeps it from doing that. So the first one, we're going to keep the knee relatively straight, and you do not have to lock it out, but the idea is to keep it really near the straight position and keep it there the whole time. Now, Josh is going to extend his hip back, and he's going to do his best not to move much up here in the trunk. And he goes, and here's the thing. Most people, in terms of range of motion, can only straighten to where their leg is in line with their trunk. So if you watch somebody that's really getting their leg up real high, there's a pretty good chance that they did that by moving, all this other stuff. And maybe even by holding this still, but just moving in the pelvis, like that. So watch and see what you've got here, because more is not always better, especially if it's coming from an entirely different place. Now, this is a glute and hamstring activity. Those are the major hip extensor muscles. But this is not a spot reducing exercise. I don't care if you do 8 million of them. It will not reduce fat from your bottom, okay? No exercise, no single exercise alone can do that. That's a matter of building muscle underneath, and then how you eat and the other activities you perform to help you burn calories, and that's the best way to get rid of the deposits of stored energy called fat. So now we can make a modification of this where we bend the knee and keep the knee bent. It's going to change the hamstring contribution of this exercise a little bit. And notice he's still doing the hip extension. Can you go up any higher? It gets a little tougher, because in essence that hamstring is not working quite as hard, believe it or not, even though your knee's bent. It's not working as hard. It might be working to keep your knee bent, but it's not necessarily working at this joint as much anymore. So it's a little bit harder to get as high. You might even have to use a little bit lighter weight if you choose this exercise. They're both fine exercises. They're both great for what they do, but they're not magic. The key is performing them correctly. This is hip abduction, A-B as in boy, duction. And the whole word means that we're moving the leg outward. So, the resistance from the lower platform here, we've just tried this multiple ways, and the thing that worked best for Amy was to move this to the furthest out pulley, the widest pulley, and put the ankle cuff around her ankle, slide it up tight so the foam is around her ankle and it's comfortable. And she can use her arm to hang on to either the crossbar or the seat, whichever works best for you. You're going to have to turn your whole body to find out which way you're going to exactly move and how it works relative to the machine. Stay away from the power rods as they go through their flexing motion. But start from about midline here and move outward. And you don't have to have a lot of motion. In fact, if you're moving way out there, there's a good chance that you move the other hip, that you bent in the spine, that you're doing a lot of other things that are not necessarily what you're trying to do. So just control all this, make the motion move straight outward to keep the leg pretty straight the whole time. And you're not going to spot reduce here. You're not going to lose fat here. You're not going to get rid of saddlebags or whatever the popular term is this day for anything you don't want out here. The thing you're doing is strengthening really vital muscles, very important muscles. She can probably even feel the same muscles working on this side where you're standing. These are muscles that are important to gait, important to standing, important to posture, important to every aspect of your life. And if you want to worry about fat, that's a totally other subject. You need to be exercising for the right reasons, and that's strength and controlling your muscles and improving the overall metabolism by increasing some muscle mass. Now there are a lot of different places in and around this machine where you can perform hip adduction, adduction, which is basically resisted movement of your leg back towards your body. Now you can try it off to the side, you can try it with different pulley positions on the platform. Here is one version. It's a little bit different from what's in the manual. You might try them both, but this seemed to work well for Amy, who has a pretty good range of motion in this. And where she's standing, she's using the pulley from this side of the machine that's all the way out in its widest setting, while standing clear across the machine. Now the idea is to start with the leg out to the side and have resisted movement back across. Now obviously she has to hold this leg up a little bit to get over the other pulley, but that doesn't hurt a thing, and it doesn't affect really what's working here. So that's not a bad idea, and that way she can go to near midline, maybe slightly cross, but you'll notice that if she really try to go over there for a minute, to really try to go over there like a ton of motion comes from other things, moving the other leg, moving the trunk, all that stuff. So don't, again, worry about how far you move, because sometimes you get clear out beyond what you originally started, what you set out to do and what you set out to work. So this is not a bad version of this. You can try some of your own if you want to, especially if you don't have as much motion and you don't have to perform quite as much motion. But this is a nice challenge for what Amy has available in terms of range. This exercise is called the lower extremity or leg kickback. and you're only going to perform one side at a time, and it's going to be a combination of motions. So the first thing you do is set up on the platform here, pulley setting narrow on one side, and use the ankle cuff grip, and you may have to refer back to the beginning part of this DVD or videotape to make sure that you got this set up right, because done right, this will be an awesome type of grip for a lot of these things, especially movements like this. Now Amy is going to lean forward and grab hold of the pad, and her body is going to remain at this angle right here. And she's not going to let any of this move. She's got her other leg bent and supporting her body. Now this next thing she does, she bends the knee, bends the hip, and then drives straight back and straightens the hip and the knee. Now, here's the key. Not only is she not moving any of this in her trunk, watch the direction she's pushing. If she tries to push too high, you're going to notice it's really hard for her to straighten her leg. She might not be able to do it. But she chooses an angle that's slightly back and downward that allows full extension of the knee and full extension of the hip. Now, a lot of people will try to move all this around to get more and more motion and higher motion, but keeping this trunk stable and in perfect alignment is a really good idea. Now, this is a great strengthening exercise, even for this other side, because it is working over here, right? Just holding and supporting her weight. A lot of people will think, oh, this is going to be great because I'm going to spot reduce something, I'm going to get rid of fat here. And again, we know that that's not true, but this is a great strengthening exercise. This is resisted hip flexion. And there may not be a lot of people that want to perform this, but if you ever do for any sports-related reason, or even sometimes in rehab, there's reasons to do it. But here's a great way to do it on the Bowflex Xtreme 2. We're going to use the platform pulley from the opposite side in its widest position, and use the ankle cuff and kind of position it so the foam pad is around the front of the ankle and it's coming off the back so that the resistance won't drag across the side of his foot or anything. He's going to keep his knee bent. And he's going to keep an upright position where he's looking forward the whole time, and then slowly bring that knee up into the front. Now, the range that he chooses to perform will determine what happens in his spine here. In fact, can I get you to hold this up for 1 second here, Josh? Because we need to see what's going on here. As he goes through the motion, the higher he goes, try to go even higher, he's going to end up with some spinal flexion and maybe even bending in the back leg. So, if starting out, you may just go really short like this, which will keep this from moving. And then if you have a reason to go up higher, but then you need to decide. You have to decide, do I want to stabilize this or do I want it to move? And there's a variety of reasons why you might want to do each. But that's going to take a little more study on your part to find out beyond just this general exercise tape which way you're going to want it for specific goals. But you probably won't go much higher than up here where the thigh is parallel to the ground. And then of course, when he's finished with that leg, like all the lower extremity exercises, if you want to be symmetrical and you want to do both sides, you're going to have to swap everything around, come over here and do the hip flexion for the right leg this other direction. This traditional version of the deadlift can be formed really well on the platform of the Bowflex Xtreme 2. We're going to use the bar that you use for some bar curls and squats and that kind of thing. We won't need any webbing extension this time because we're going to want to come down as low as we can, or at least work to that direction. Now Josh is going to grab it a little wider than his knees, about shoulder width or so. And because the very first lifting of the bar is his first repetition, he's really got to pay attention here. So he's going to keep his head in line with his body by kind of looking down there, and get this back straight by sticking his bottom out. If he keeps his bottom tucked under, he's going to have this big rounded thing in his low back that is not what we want. So he's nice and flat. It's kind of like a squat, knees pointed the same direction as the toes, and he's going to use the entire lower extremity while keeping this position of his spine stable, and slowly stand up, letting the bar go right past the knees and pull up to the thigh. Now as he returns to that position, every single thing he paid such great attention to before has got to be maintained. And it's really nice because the resistance of the power rods actually gives you a little less resistance when you're down here at the bottom, which is the tougher part of the range, and a little more resistance up at the top where you would potentially not even be working if you were using a free weight. Notice he also keeps his shoulder blades pinched back a little bit so that as the weight pulls on his arms, it doesn't round his shoulders off to create a kind of a crummy posture there. Now, you could use the adjustable webbing in here if you knew for sure that you couldn't pull from this depth right at this starting place. You could start from virtually right here with the adjustable webbing and stop about right there if you wanted to, and then stand straight up. So if you had the webbing, you would not even have to start but from right here. So that might be something to think about, and then progress to lower and lower ranges, working your way all the way down to the maximum right there. This is involving everything that's involved in a regular squat. Hamstrings, quads, even little calf muscles, a lot of low back and hips. This is the stiff leg deadlift. And this is absolutely one of the toughest exercises to do correctly. I would consider it advanced even. And we're going to start out by having Josh stand on the platform. We're in the wide pulley setting, and we've got the straight bar attached. And I'm going to go ahead and have him do kind of a traditional deadlift kind of a thing to lift it up to the top position. Keeping his back in a perfect position, using his entire leg. Now here's the key to this exercise, and you're going to see it from the side view over here. Everything about this exercise is determined by the low back. So, as he starts to bend forward, here's the first thing. He's going to stick his bottom out. Don't go any further for a second. Do you see how he started by, come back up, moving this backward? That's very different than trying to stay here and move the top part forward. Don't even think about that. That'll not only mess with your balance, it'll be a totally different thing in your mind and neurologically. So your goal is to keep the spinal position, but slowly start putting your hips backward. And you're kind of trying to keep your knees near straight. And he did not go any further than what his back could remain straight for. There you go. So that's the motion that he performed. Now what you need to do, if you only move, do it just a real short one, Josh. If you can only go this far and then come back up, because that's from the side view, you can tell that that's the only way you can keep your spine in the right alignment, then that's the place to stop. That's okay. And as you get better at controlling, you'll be able to go down further and further. Now, if a slight bend occurs in the knee, if a slight knee position change occurs in the knee, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Because your hamstring tension, how tight your hamstrings are, is going to determine whether you'll really be able to keep your knees near straight or have to let them bend a little bit. And if you try to keep your knees straight and you have really poor hamstring flexibility, then your back, you won't be able to go anywhere because your back will start to bend right in the middle, then we're not going to want that. So those are the key points. Your hips will move backwards first, your back will stay straight the whole time, and we're not really that concerned about how stiff-legged your knees are. In other words, let them float a little bit. Another thing you can do, Josh, and a lot of people have a tendency to look up and stay looking up the whole time. If that bothers your neck, and it will for a lot of people, go ahead and look down at the floor as you bend forward so you're not going into extreme cervical extension up there and causing a lot of tension in this area. What you should be feeling is not only some glutes, but a tremendous amount of hamstring activity here. You can't really separate the two. They're always trying to do the same thing at the hip, both those groups of muscles. But the hamstrings, because of the limited knee movement, should feel like one of the predominant muscles involved.